I walked into the diner on 4th Street, and the silence hit me like a physical blow. The clatter of silverware stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. 20 heads turned in unison. It was the kind of coordination you usually see in synchronized swimming, not a Tuesday morning breakfast rush in a town of 3,000 people. I kept my eyes forward and walked to the counter. The waitress, a woman named Brenda who had known me since I was in diapers, looked at me with a mixture of fear and disgust. She did not pick up the coffee pot. She did not ask me how my mother was doing. She placed a laminate menu on the counter and slid it toward me with 2 fingers, as if touching something I touched might infect her. I was the pariah. I was the monster. According to the town of Oakhaven, I was a violent, manipulative abuser who had terrorized the sweetest girl in the county for 4 years. The truth was irrelevant here. In small towns, truth is not determined by facts or evidence. Truth is determined by volume and repetition. Sarah had both. She had the voice of an angel and the persistence of a metronome. She had spent the last 3 months systematically dismantling my life, brick by brick, friend by friend, paycheck by paycheck. She had done it with tears in her eyes and a tremble in her voice that made grown men want to challenge me to a duel. I ordered black coffee. Brenda hesitated. I saw her glance toward the manager in the back. I knew what she was thinking. She was wondering if serving me would cost her customers. She decided the tip wasn't worth the moral compromise. "We are out of coffee," she said. The pot behind her was full. Steam rose from it in a steady, taunting line. I looked at the pot. I looked at Brenda. I did not argue. I did not make a scene. That was what Sarah wanted. She wanted me to snap. She wanted me to yell so she could point a finger and say, "See? I told you he had a temper." I stood up. The stool scraped against the linoleum. The sound was deafening in the quiet room. I turned around and walked out. As the door closed behind me, I heard the hum of conversation start up again. I knew exactly what they were talking about. They were talking about how brave Sarah was for leaving me. They were talking about how lucky she was to be alive. I got into my truck and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I did not scream. I did not cry. I drove home to my empty house. The house Sarah had picked out. The house I was now paying for alone because she had cleared out our joint savings account on her way out the door. She called it emotional distress compensation. My lawyer called it theft, but the local sheriff called it a civil matter. The sheriff was Sarah's uncle. I sat in my living room and stared at the wall. I had lost my job at the logistics firm 2 weeks ago. My boss cited restructuring, but he wouldn't look me in the eye. I knew the real reason. Sarah had told his wife that I had threatened her. The details were vague, but the implication was enough. No one wanted a liability on the payroll. My friends, people I had gone to high school with, had stopped returning my texts. My own cousin had blocked me on Facebook. I was completely isolated. I was drowning. And the worst part was the confusion. I didn't understand why she was doing this. The breakup had been mutual. Or so I thought. We had grown apart. The spark had faded. We sat down, we talked, we agreed to separate. There was no shouting. There was no throwing of plates. I helped her pack her boxes. I carried her vanity table down the stairs. I hugged her goodbye. 3 days later, the rumors started. It began with a whisper. Someone asked me if I had really locked her in the basement. I laughed. I thought it was a sick joke. Then someone else asked why I controlled her finances so strictly she couldn't buy tampons. Then the police knocked on my door to do a welfare check, because an anonymous caller reported screaming coming from my house. I lived alone. It escalated quickly. Sarah posted a photo on Instagram. It was just a black screen with the caption, "Finally free." The bruises heal, but the memories stay. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. Everyone knew who she had been with. The comments section was a bloodbath. People were calling for my head. People I had bought beers for. People I had helped move furniture. I tried to reach out to her. I sent text after text. "Sarah, what is going on? Why are you doing this?" Silence. Then, a restraining order served by her uncle. I was legally barred from contacting her or coming within 500 feet of her residence. I was checkmated. I couldn't defend myself without looking like I was harassing her. Every denial I issued was twisted into gaslighting. I was ready to leave town. I was looking at apartments in the next state over. I was going to sell the house at a loss and run. I was going to let her win. Then I found the iPad. It was wedged between the cushions of the old sectional in the basement. I was looking for loose change to buy a pack of cigarettes. My hand brushed against cool metal. I pulled it out. It was an old iPad Air, the screen cracked in the corner. It was dead. I didn't recognize it at first. Then I remembered. Sarah used it for recipes and reading ebooks. She had upgraded to a newer model 6 months ago, and this one had been relegated to junk drawer status. She must have been using it down here while I was working late, and it slipped into the abyss of the couch. I plugged it in. The charging icon appeared. I waited. I did not expect much. I figured it would be wiped or locked. Sarah was careful with her phone. She guarded her passcode like a nuclear launch code. But this was the old tablet. The house tablet. It booted up. The passcode screen appeared. I tried her birthday. Incorrect. I tried our anniversary. Incorrect. I tried 1234. Incorrect. I tried 0000. Incorrect. I sat back and thought. Sarah was a creature of habit, but she was also incredibly vain. I tried the date she won Miss Oakhaven 5 years ago. 0614. The screen unlocked. I was in. My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt like an intruder in my own home. I navigated to the Messages app. It was synced to her iCloud. The last update was from 3 days ago. It was still logged in. She had changed her phone password, but she hadn't forced a logout on trusted devices. She had forgotten this thing existed. I saw the threads. Dozens of them. At the top was a group chat named The Liberation. The members were Sarah, her mother, her best friend Jessica, and Linda. Linda was the town's social architect. She ran the HNA, the PTA, and the church charity board. If you wanted to survive in Oakhaven, you kissed Linda's ring. Linda had never liked me. I had once refused to give her a discount on shipping for her custom candle business, because it was against company policy. She had held a grudge for 3 years. I opened the chat. I started reading. I read for hours. I read until the sun went down and the room turned pitch black, illuminated only by the glow of the screen. What I found was not just a smear campaign. It was a military operation. It started 4 months before the breakup. Sarah, he's so boring, guys. I can't do it anymore. But I can't just leave. I need a reason. I need him to be the bad guy so I don't look like a bitch for walking out on steady reliable Mike. Linda, we can work with that. You need a narrative. You need to be a survivor. Jessica, is he hitting you? Sarah, God no. He barely raises his voice. It's annoying. He's so patient it makes me want to scream. Linda, emotional abuse is invisible. And harder to disprove. Start planting seeds. Tell people he checks your mileage. Tell people he doesn't like you seeing your friends. Sarah, but he loves my friends. Linda, does it matter? They don't know that. You tell them he makes comments after they leave. You tell them he gets sullen. I scrolled down. The dates lined up perfectly with when the atmosphere in town had started to shift. Sarah, I told Brenda at the diner that Mike threw a plate last night. She ate it up. She gave me a free slice of pie. Jessica, good. Keep going. You need to look tired. Stop wearing concealer under your eyes. Sarah, I'm seeing Jason tonight. Mike thinks I'm at yoga. I froze. Jason. Jason Miller. The pastor's son. The guy who ran the youth ministry. The guy who shook my hand every Sunday and asked about my work. I searched the messages for Jason. I found a separate thread between Sarah and Jason. It was explicit. It was graphic. And it was dated back 6 months. While I was working double shifts to pay for the kitchen renovation she wanted, she was in the back seat of Jason's Jeep. But the infidelity wasn't the smoking gun. In a small town, cheating is scandalous, but it doesn't destroy you. People forgive pretty girls for falling in love. No, the smoking gun was in the liberation chat. Sarah and her team weren't just attacking me. They were attacking everyone. They were mocking the very people who were supporting them. Sarah, Brenda was crying on me today about her divorce. I had to pretend to care, so she keeps spreading the rumors about Mike. God, she smells like old grease and desperation. Linda, Brenda is a useful idiot. Just nod and pat her arm. Sarah, and Uncle Ray, the sheriff. He's so creepy. He keeps hugging me a little too long when I go in to file reports. But I need him to scare Mike. I feel like I need a shower every time I leave the station. Jessica, whatever it takes, babe. Eyes on the prize. Sarah, the prize being half the equity in the house without having to pay for it. I deserve it for putting up with Mike's mediocrity. They went after everyone. They called the pastor a hypocrite who steals from the collection plate. They called the mayor's wife a functioning alcoholic who can't keep her legs shut. They mocked Linda's own friends in the HOA. Even Linda wasn't safe from Sarah. In the private thread with Jason, Sarah wrote, "Linda is such a power-hungry hag. Once I get what I want, I'm dropping her. She thinks she owns this town. She's just a lonely old woman with a candle fetish." I had it all. I had the fabrication of the abuse. I had the admission of the theft. I had the cheating. And I had the insults that would turn the entire town against her. I exported everything. I took screenshots. I screen recorded the scrolling through the conversations to prove they weren't photoshopped. I backed it up to 3 different cloud services and a USB drive. Then I formulated a plan. Posting it on Facebook was too easy. She could claim her account was hacked. She could claim I faked it. I needed an audience. I needed witnesses. I needed a moment where she couldn't run away. The Oak Haven Founders Day Gala was in 3 days. It was the biggest event of the year. Everyone would be there. The mayor, the sheriff, the pastor, Brenda, the teachers, the business owners. And, of course, Sarah. She was receiving the Community Spirit Award for her work organizing the charity drive, a drive I had done 80% of the heavy lifting for. I wasn't invited. In fact, Linda had made it clear that if I showed up, security would remove me. I didn't need to be in the room. I just needed my message to be. I spent the next 2 days working. I edited the screenshots into a video. I synced the text bubbles to appear in chronological order, telling the story of the conspiracy. I highlighted the most damning insults. I overlaid audio I found on the iPad, voice memos Sarah had sent to Jessica laughing about how easy it was to manipulate the sheriff. "He literally believes anything I say," her voice drawled in the recording. I could say Mike is a warlock and Ray would arrest him. I set up a website. Simple URL. https://www.google.com/search?Q=the truth about Oakhaven.com. I uploaded the video and the raw PDF archives of the chats. Now, distribution. I couldn't just hand out flyers. I knew the AV guy for the gala. His name was Toby. We used to play Halo together in high school. Toby was one of the few who hadn't blocked me, mostly because Toby didn't care about town drama. He cared about weed and video games. I met Toby behind the bowling alley at midnight. "This better be good, Mike," he said, blowing smoke into the cold air. "If Linda sees me talking to you, I'm dead." "I need a favor, Toby. A big one." I showed him the video on my phone. Just the first minute. The part where Sarah calls Toby's mom a hoarder who should be institutionalized. Toby's face went hard. His mom was a sweet lady who struggled with clutter, and Toby was fiercely protective of her. "She sent that?" Toby asked. "There's more," I said. "A lot more." I handed him the USB drive. Sunday night. During her acceptance speech. "Can you do it?" Toby looked at the drive. He looked at me. He grinned, and it was a wolfish thing. "I'm running the projector. I can hijack the feed. But I'll get fired. I'll give you $500 and a reference for that tech job in the city you want," I said. "I know the hiring manager. He owes me." Deal. Sunday night arrived. I sat in my truck in the parking lot of the community center. I couldn't go inside, but I had a live stream pulled up on my phone. The local news page was broadcasting the speeches. The room was packed. People were wearing their Sunday best. Round tables with white tablecloths filled the gymnasium. The sheriff was there, looking smug. The pastor was there, looking pious. Jason was sitting 2 tables away from Sarah, trying to look uninterested. Linda was at the podium. "And now," Linda said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, "it is my honor to present the Community Spirit Award to a young woman who has shown resilience, grace, and strength in the face of terrible adversity. A woman who reminds us that even when broken, we can shine. Sarah Jenkins." The room erupted in applause. Sarah stood up. She was wearing a pale blue dress that made her look fragile and angelic. She walked to the stage, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. She took the microphone. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much. This year has been the hardest of my life. I didn't know if I would make it through. But the support of this town, the love from all of you." She paused for effect. It was a masterclass in acting. "I want to thank Linda," Sarah said, "for being my rock." On the massive projection screen behind her, the image of the Community Spirit logo flickered. Then it went black. A confused murmur ran through the crowd. Sarah looked back, confused. Then, the video started. It began with the text, "The truth." Then, the screenshots appeared. Massive. High definition. Readable from the back of the room. "Sarah, he's so boring, guys. I can't do it anymore. But I can't just leave. I need a reason." The room went silent. Dead silent. Sarah turned around. She saw the screen. She gasped and put her hand over her mouth. She looked toward the sound booth. "Turn it off," she shrieked. Her angelic whisper was gone. "Toby, turn it off." Toby did not turn it off. The video kept rolling. "Linda, tell people he checks your mileage. Emotional abuse is invisible." A collective gasp went through the room. Linda, standing next to Sarah, went pale. She reached for the power cord of the podium, but that didn't stop the projector. The video cut to the insults. Sarah's text on screen, "Brenda is a useful idiot. Just nod and pat her arm. She smells like old grease." The camera on the live stream panned to Brenda. She was standing near the kitchen doors, a tray of water glasses in her hand. She dropped the tray. The crash of breaking glass was the only sound in the gym other than the audio from the video. Sarah's voice, recording, "I could say Mike is a warlock and Ray would arrest him. He's such a creep." The sheriff stood up. His face was purple. He looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at him, eyes wide with terror. "It's fake." Sarah screamed. "Mike made it. It's AI. It's not real." Then came the Jason texts. Photo of Jason and Sarah in bed. Time-stamped. "Sarah, Mike is at work. Come over. I need you to wash the husband off me." The camera found the pastor. He was staring at his son. Jason was staring at the floor, shrinking into his chair. The pastor's wife looked like she was going to faint. Then the final blow. The insult to the town itself. "Sarah, God, I hate this backwater hellhole. Once I get the settlement money from Mike, I'm moving to the city. These people are sheep. They're so desperate for drama they'll believe anything. I own them." The video ended with the URL, https://www.google.com/search?Q=thetruthAboutTokehaven.com. The screen went black. For 10 seconds, no one moved. Then, Brenda started walking. She walked right up to the stage. She walked up the stairs. Sarah stepped back, holding her hands up. "Brenda, listen, I didn't mean." Brenda didn't hit her. She just leaned into the microphone. "You're a liar, Sarah," Brenda said. Her voice shook, but it was loud. "And I hope you rot." The dam broke. The room exploded into chaos. The sheriff was shouting at his deputies. The pastor was dragging Jason out by his ear. Linda was trying to explain herself to the mayor's wife, who was shouting in her face. Sarah stood alone on the stage. The illusion was shattered. The angel was gone. She looked small, mean, and trapped. She looked at the camera. She looked right at me, watching from my truck. She knew. I turned off the live stream. I put my phone in my pocket. I started the engine. I didn't stay to watch the rest. I didn't need to. The work was done. I drove home. I packed a bag. I grabbed my cat, Buster. I loaded the truck. I wasn't staying in Oakhaven. Even with my name cleared, the well was poisoned. These people had turned on me at the drop of a hat. They had believed the worst without asking a single question. They were, as Sarah had said, sheep. And I didn't want to be a shepherd. I drove out of town at 2 a.m. I passed the Welcome to Oakhaven sign. I felt lighter than I had in years. The fallout, which I followed from a safe distance in my new apartment 3 hours away, was nuclear. Sarah was evicted. It turns out when you alienate the sheriff and the landlord, who was the mayor's brother-in-law, housing becomes scarce. She moved back in with her parents, but even they were pariahs by association. She eventually left town, moving to the coast. Last I heard, she was working in retail. Linda was ousted from the HWA and the charity board. Her social standing evaporated overnight. The candle business went under because no one wanted to buy lavender scents from the woman who plotted to ruin an innocent man. Jason was sent to a boarding school or a religious retreat. The details were fuzzy. The pastor resigned. I got my job back. Well, they offered it back. The boss called me, apologizing profusely, saying there had been a misunderstanding. I told him to shove his misunderstanding. I found a better job with a competitor who appreciated my skills and didn't care about small-town gossip. I still get messages sometimes. People from Oakhaven reaching out. Hey Mike, we miss you. Hey Mike, I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. Hey Mike, let's grab a beer. I never reply. I deleted their numbers. I kept the iPad though. It sits in my new junk drawer. A reminder. A reminder that the truth is powerful, but timing is everything. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't screaming your side of the story to people who won't listen. It's handing them the microphone and letting them destroy themselves. The envelope was thick. Heavy. The kind of certified mail that lands on your doormat with a thud that vibrates through the floorboards and into the soles of your feet. I knew what it was before I saw the return address. I did not need to open it to know that my life was over, or at least the life I had built for the last decade was about to be dissected, flayed, and served up to a judge. It was from a law firm downtown. Intent to sue for partition and sale. The plaintiff was my brother, Caleb. The man I had pulled out of a trunk of a Honda Civic 2 years ago with a gun to his head. The man whose debt I paid. The man who was currently sleeping in my guest room, eating my food, and watching my Netflix. He was not just suing me. He was claiming he owned half my house. And the worst part was that my mother was driving him to the lawyer's office. I stood in my hallway. The hardwood floors I had sanded myself seemed to mock me. The light from the transom window hit the paper in my hand. I ripped it open. The language was dry, precise, and lethal. It spoke of constructive trusts, equitable interest, and promissory estoppel. It claimed that Caleb Richards had contributed significant capital and labor toward the improvement and maintenance of the property located at 4402 Oakview Lane. It claimed that there was a verbal agreement between the parties to share ownership. It claimed that I, Mark Richards, was holding his share of the equity hostage. It was a lie. Every single word of it was a fabrication designed to extort me. But as I read through the 30-page complaint, I felt a cold realization settle in my gut. He had been planning this. He had not just been lazy for the last year. He had been building a case. Every time he mowed the lawn, every time he painted a baseboard, every time he handed me $200 in cash for groceries, he was creating a paper trail of tenancy and contribution. I had invited a viper into my bed, and now it was constricting. I walked into the kitchen. Caleb was there. He was making a sandwich. He looked up at me, his eyes dead and flat. He saw the papers in my hand. He did not flinch. He did not look guilty. He looked entitled. He took a bite of the turkey sandwich, chewed slowly, and swallowed. "You got the mail," he said. It was a statement, not a question. I placed the papers on the granite island. I smoothed them out. I looked at him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to drag him out of the house by his collar and throw him into the street. But I did nothing. I knew that any act of aggression would end up in an affidavit within the hour. I was trapped in my own home with a hostile litigant. "You are suing me," I said. My voice was calm. It terrified me how calm I sounded. "I want what is mine, Mark," he said. He took another bite. I laughed. It was a dry, hacking sound. "Yours. You think this house is yours?" "We had a deal," he said. "We did not have a deal," I said. "I paid off your debt. I saved your life. You needed a place to stay. That was the deal." "That is your version," he said. "My lawyer sees it differently." I looked at him, really looked at him. I tried to find the brother I had grown up with, the kid I played baseball with, the teenager I covered for when he snuck out. He was gone. In his place was a desperate, greedy stranger who had learned that legal extortion was safer than dealing with loan sharks. "Get out," I said. He smiled. It was a smug, tight little smile. "I cannot do that, Mark. This is my primary residence. If you kick me out, that is an illegal eviction. My lawyer said you might try that. I suggest you read the rest of the document." I looked down. There it was. A warning against locking him out, cutting off utilities, or harassment. He had me checkmated in my own kitchen. I turned around and walked out the front door. I got in my truck. I drove. I did not know where I was going. I just needed to be away from him before I did something that would send me to prison. I drove to a parking lot overlooking the city. I turned off the engine. I sat there in the silence and replayed the last 2 years of my life, trying to pinpoint the exact moment I had destroyed myself. It started with a phone call at 3 in the morning. That is how these things always start. It was Caleb. He was crying. He was hysterical. He said he was at a warehouse district south of the city. He said he owed money to people who did not send demand letters. He said they were going to kill him. I had known Caleb had a problem. We all knew. He liked the action. He liked sports betting. He liked poker. But we thought it was under control. We thought it was a hobby. We were wrong. He had graduated to high-stakes underground games. He had borrowed from a man named Silas. Silas was not a bank. Silas was a myth in the criminal underworld of our city, a man who charged 10% interest a week and collected collateral in bone and blood. I drove to the warehouse. I found Caleb sitting on a curb, shaking. His face was bruised. His lip was split. A black SUV was parked across the street. 2 men were watching him. I got out of my truck. I walked over to the SUV. The window rolled down. The man inside was calm, professional. He told me the number. $82,500. It was an impossible number. It was a number that ruined lives. But looking at Caleb, looking at the terror in his eyes, I made a choice. I chose blood over logic. I told the man I would pay it. I told him I needed 48 hours. He gave me 24. I liquidated everything. I sold my stock portfolio. I emptied my emergency fund. I took a hardship withdrawal from my 401k, eating the penalties and taxes. I maxed out 2 credit cards for cash advances. I scraped together every penny I had to my name. I was 32 years old. I had spent 10 years building a financial foundation, saving for a future family, being responsible. In one afternoon, I set a match to it all. I paid Silas. I met him in a diner. I handed over a duffel bag of cash. He counted it. He nodded. He told me my brother was a lucky man. He told me to keep better leash on my dog. I took Caleb home. He cried the whole way. He promised me he would change. He promised me he would pay me back. He swore on our father's grave. He said he would work 3 jobs. He said he would go to meetings. He said I was his savior. I believed him. Because he was my brother. Because you have to believe them, or else you have to admit that you just threw your life away for nothing. He had nowhere to go. His apartment had been evicted while he was hiding out. He had lost his job. So I did the natural thing. I told him he could stay with me. I have a 3-bedroom house in a rising neighborhood. I bought it as a fixer-upper 5 years ago. I had poured my sweat into it. It was my pride. I moved him into the guest room. I told him the rules. No gambling. Get a job. Pay me back what you can, when you can. The first 3 months were okay. He got a job at a landscaping company. He was tired in the evenings. He helped around the house. We watched football. It felt like we were kids again, just hanging out. He gave me $500 a month. It was a drop in the bucket compared to the 82 grand, but it was a gesture. I felt like I had done the right thing. I felt like a good brother. Then he met Courtney. Courtney was a paralegal. She was sharp, attractive, and ambitious. She was also toxic. I saw it immediately. She looked at my house not as a home, but as an asset. She asked questions about the mortgage, the equity, the neighborhood comps. She asked about my job. She asked about Caleb's finances. I tried to warn him. I told him she was too intense. He got defensive. He said I was jealous. He said I didn't want him to be happy. He said Courtney believed in him. Courtney started spending the night. Then she started leaving clothes. Then she was there every dinner. She started making comments about the house. The kitchen is dated, she would say. You should knock down that wall. The master bath needs a double vanity. I told her I liked my house the way it was. She rolled her eyes. She looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at the floor. That was the beginning of the shift. Caleb stopped paying the $500. He said he was saving up for a ring for Courtney. He said he wanted to start a life. I let it slide. I was soft. I wanted him to move out eventually, and if saving money helped that happen, fine. Then came the renovation proposal. Caleb came to me one Saturday. He said he wanted to finish the basement. He said it would add value to the house. He said he and Courtney needed more space if they were going to stay a bit longer. He said he would do all the labor. He was a landscaper. He knew how to build things. All I had to do was buy the materials. I hesitated. But the basement was a dungeon. It was unfinished concrete and exposed pipes. Finishing it would add significant equity. And if it kept him and Courtney out of my living room, it seemed like a win. We went to the hardware store. I put $5,000 of lumber, drywall, and flooring on my credit card. Caleb started working. He was slow. He worked weekends. Courtney helped. They painted. They hung drywall. It took 6 months. During that time, Caleb acted like he was the lord of the manor. He would have friends over to see the progress. He would say, "Look at what we are doing to the place." I corrected him once in front of his friends. I said, "Yes, Caleb is doing a great job on my basement." The room went silent. Caleb glared at me. Later, he confronted me. "You embarrassed me," he said. "It is my house, Caleb," I said. "I am putting my blood and sweat into this place," he said. "That counts for something." "It counts for rent," I said. "You are living here for free." He stormed off. I thought he was just blowing off steam. I did not know he was recording the conversation. The year mark passed. The debt was still $82,000. He had paid me back maybe $2,000 total. I sat him down. I told him I needed a plan. I told him I needed to see a repayment schedule. I told him he needed to start looking for an apartment. He looked at me with that same dead-eyed expression he had in the kitchen today. "I cannot move out," he said. "The market is too crazy." "Then you need to pay rent," I said. "Market rate. $1,000 a month." He laughed. "You are going to charge your brother rent? After I built your basement?" "I paid for the materials," I said. "And you are living here. You use the water, the power, the internet. You eat my food. We are partners," he said. "We are not partners," I said. That night, he left to go to Courtney's. He stayed there for 3 days. I thought maybe he was finally moving out. I felt a sense of relief. I started planning what I would do with the guest room. I thought about turning it into an office. Then he came back. He brought his mother. My mother has always had a soft spot for Caleb. He is the baby. He is the one who needs help. I am the eldest. I am the responsible one. I am the one who does not need anything. Therefore, I am the one who must give everything. She sat on my couch. Caleb sat next to her. They looked like a tribunal. "Mark," she said. "Caleb tells me you are kicking him out." "I am not kicking him out, Mom," I said. "I am asking him to pay rent or find his own place. It has been a year." "He is family," she said. "You have this big house all to yourself. Why are you being so greedy?" "Greedy?" I almost choked. Mom, I paid off $80,000 of his debt. I saved his life. I have supported him for a year. I am broke because of him. That is in the past, she said. You cannot hold that over his head forever. He is trying to build a future. He fixed up your basement. He has increased the value of your home. It is only fair that he gets to stay. I looked at Caleb. He was smirking. He was hiding behind our mother. I cannot do this anymore, I said. He has 30 days. You cannot do that to your brother, she said. If you kick him out, you are kicking me out of your life too. I stood up. I walked to the door. I opened it. I am not discussing this, I said. 30 days. They left. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I had drawn a line. I started the formal eviction process the next day. I posted the notice on his bedroom door. Notice to quit. 30 days to vacate. 2 days later, the lawsuit arrived. Now, sitting in my truck overlooking the city, I realized the depth of the betrayal. This was not just Caleb. This was Courtney. This was a legal strategy they had cooked up together. The basement renovation was not a favor. It was a calculated move to establish a contribution to the property value. The cash payments for groceries were likely documented as mortgage contributions in his ledger. The lack of a written lease was a weapon. I pulled out my phone. I called the best real estate attorney in the city. His name was Harrison. He was expensive. I did not have the money. I put the retainer on a credit card I didn't know I had left. I met Harrison the next morning. His office was glass and steel. He looked at the paperwork Caleb had served me. He read it in silence. He hummed a few times. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "This is a problem," he said. I felt the blood drain from my face. "How?" "It is my house. My name is on the deed. My name is on the mortgage. I bought it 5 years before he moved in." Harrison nodded. "In a vacuum, yes. But family law mixed with property law is messy. He is claiming a constructive trust. He is arguing that there was an oral agreement that in exchange for the $85,000, which he is characterizing not as a debt payoff, but as an investment into the household, and his labor in renovating the property, he was granted an equity interest. That is insane, I said. The $85 grand was to pay a loan shark. Can you prove that? Harrison asked. I stared at him. I paid cash. To a criminal. In a diner. So you have no receipt, Harrison said. No paper trail linking that money to a debt. I have the withdrawal slips, I said. That proves you took money out, Harrison said. It does not prove where it went. Your brother is claiming he gave that money to you to hold, or that you used it to pay down the mortgage, or that it was a buy-in. He is lying, I said. Courts deal in evidence, not truth, Harrison said. And the renovation? Did he do the work? Yes, but I paid for materials. Do you have receipts? Some, I said. I bought a lot of it at big box stores. I probably threw them away. He has photos, Harrison said, pointing to the exhibit list. Before and after photos. Photos of him working. Photos of receipts he apparently kept. He has built a narrative, Mark. He is the industrious brother who invested his life savings and sweat into the family home, and you are the older brother trying to steal his equity. I felt sick. Physically sick. I grabbed the trash can next to the desk and dry heaved. Harrison waited for me to finish. He handed me a bottle of water. Listen to me, he said. We can fight this. But it will be expensive. And it will be ugly. He is asking for a partition sale. That means the court forces you to sell the house and split the proceeds. If the house is worth $500,000, he wants $250. He owes me $80 grand. I shouted. Harrison leaned forward. Then we countersue. We sue for the debt. We sue for unjust enrichment. We sue for back rent. We turn this into a war. But you need to understand something. The law favors the occupant in many ways. Getting him out while this is pending will be difficult. What do I do? I asked. First, Harrison said, you go home. You do not speak to him. You do not text him. You record every interaction. You put a lock on your bedroom door. You secure your financial documents. And you find that bookie. What? You said you paid a loan shark, Harrison said. If we can get an affidavit, or even a recording, proving the money went to a gambling debt, his entire narrative of investment falls apart. It destroys his credibility. It proves the money was a gift or a loan, not a property buy-in. I cannot go back to Silas, I said. He is dangerous. Then you lose the house, Harrison said. I left the office. I drove home. The house felt different. It felt violated. I walked inside. Caleb was on the couch. He was watching a movie. He did not look up. I walked to my room. I installed a keypad lock on the door. I moved my file cabinet into my closet. I set up a camera in the hallway. I was living in a bunker. The next few weeks were a nightmare. The legal bills started mounting. Caleb stopped hiding his hostility. He would leave dishes in the sink for days. He would blast music at midnight. He would invite Courtney over, and they would sit in the kitchen, talking loudly about how they were going to decorate the house once I was gone. They were trying to break me. They wanted me to settle. They wanted me to write a check for $100,000 just to make them go away. I refused. I dug in. I spent my nights going through old bank statements, trying to reconstruct the timeline. I found text messages from 2 years ago. Most were vague. Please help me, I messed up, I promise I'll pay. Nothing that explicitly said gambling debt to Silas. We had been too careful. We hadn't wanted a record. That caution was now hanging me. I tried to talk to my mother. She refused to listen. She said I was being vindictive. She said I was tearing the family apart. She told me that if I proceeded with the lawsuit, she would write me out of her will. I told her I didn't care. I told her she was being manipulated. She hung up on me. I was alone. My friends tried to be supportive, but they didn't understand the legal nuances. They just said, kick him out. They didn't understand that kicking him out would give him grounds for a restraining order or a claim of illegal eviction that would damage my case. I had to find Silas. It took me a week to work up the courage. I went back to the diner where I had paid him. I sat in the same booth. I ordered coffee. I waited. I went there 3 nights in a row. On the 4th night, he walked in. He looked exactly the same. Expensive suit, cold eyes. He sat 2 booths away. He was alone. I waited for the waitress to refill his coffee. Then I stood up. My legs were shaking. I walked over to his booth. Silas, I said. He looked up. He did not smile. He did not look surprised. He just looked bored. You are the brother, he said. The one with the checkbook. I need a favor, I said. He laughed. A soft, dry sound. You paid your debt. We are square. I do not do favors. My brother is suing me, I said. He claims the money I gave you was an investment in my house. He is trying to take my home. Silas took a sip of coffee. That sounds like a civil matter. I need proof, I said. I need proof that the money was for a gambling debt. He looked at me with something like pity. You want me to admit to a felony? You want me to sign a paper saying I engage in illegal lending and extortion? You are smarter than that. I am desperate, I said. Silas shook his head. Walk away, kid. Your brother is a rat. Rats eat their own. That is nature. He went back to his coffee. I stood there for a moment, humiliated. Then I left. I was out of options. Harrison told me that without the link to the debt, it was my word against his. And since Caleb had the renovation evidence, a judge might lean toward an equitable split. I went home. It was a Tuesday. I walked in. The house was quiet. Caleb was not home. I went to the basement. I stood in the middle of the room he had built. I looked at the drywall. I looked at the floors. I hated it. I hated every inch of it. I saw a loose panel on the side of the HVAC closet. It was not screwed in properly. Sloppy work. I knelt down to fix it. I pulled the panel off. Behind it, tucked into the insulation, was a notebook. It was a spiral-bound notebook. Cheap. I opened it. It was a ledger. But not a construction ledger. It was a gambling ledger. Caleb had not stopped. The dates went back 18 months. He had been betting the whole time. Football, basketball, prop bets. The numbers were smaller than before, but they were consistent. And there were names. Paid Courtney, borrowed from Mom, skimmed from grocery money. And there, on the first page, was a note. Plan B. If Mark kicks me out. Courtney says we can claim equity. Keep receipts. Make sure to buy materials with cash so he can't trace it back to his card if possible, or say I reimbursed him cash. Track hours worked. Rate $50 per hour. My hands shook. This was it. This was the smoking gun. It proved the renovation was a premeditated scheme. It proved the gambling continued. It proved the investment narrative was a fraud. I took photos of every page. I put the notebook back exactly where I found it. I did not want him to know I had it. Not yet. I sent the photos to Harrison. He called me 10 minutes later. He was laughing. This is beautiful, he said. This is the nail in the coffin. But we need the original. You need to secure that notebook. I can't take it, I said. He will know. Wait until the deposition, Harrison said. We are deposing him next week. We will surprise him with the photos. If he denies it, we demand the original. If he destroys it, that is spoliation of evidence. We have him. The week before the deposition was the longest of my life. I had to act normal. I had to watch him eat my food and smirk at me, knowing that I had the power to destroy him in my pocket. The day of the deposition arrived. We met in Harrison's conference room. Caleb was there with his lawyer, a strip mall attorney who looked like he slept in his suit. Courtney was there, sitting in the back. My mother was there, glaring at me. Harrison started gently. He asked about the living arrangement. He asked about the money. Caleb recited his script perfectly. The $85,000 was a buy-in. The renovation was sweat equity. We were partners. Harrison let him talk. He let him dig the hole deep. He asked Caleb under oath if he had gambled at all in the last 2 years. No, Caleb said. I have been clean. I have been focused on the house. Harrison asked if there was any written agreement regarding the house. No, Caleb said. It was a handshake. Brothers don't need contracts. Harrison paused. He reached into his folder. He pulled out a glossy 8x10 photo of the notebook page titled Plan B. He slid it across the table. Do you recognize this handwriting? Harrison asked. Caleb looked at the photo. His face went pale. The color drained out of him so fast I thought he was going to faint. Courtney leaned forward, saw the photo, and gasped. I don't know what that is, Caleb stammered. It appears to be a ledger, Harrison said. Found in the HVAC closet of the basement you renovated. It details a plan to defraud your brother. It also details continued gambling losses. That's not mine, Caleb said. We can have a handwriting expert verify it, Harrison said. We can also subpoena your mother's bank records to see if they match the borrowed from Mom entries. We can subpoena Courtney's records. Caleb looked at his lawyer. His lawyer looked at the photo, then at Caleb. The lawyer closed his folder. Can we take a recess? The lawyer asked. They went into the hallway. I could hear shouting. I could hear Courtney's shrill voice. I could hear my mother crying. 10 minutes later, they came back in. Caleb looked defeated. Courtney looked furious. My mother would not look at me. We are prepared to drop the suit, the lawyer said. If Mark agrees to waive any claims for back rent. Harrison looked at me. It was my call. I could crush him. I could sue him for the debt, the rent, the legal fees. I could bankrupt him. I could garnish his wages for the rest of his life. I looked at Caleb. He was broken. The smugness was gone. He was just a pathetic, addicted kid who had tried to con the one person who cared about him. I want him out, I said. Today. I want his keys. I want his stuff gone by sunset. And I want a signed document admitting that he has no interest in the property and that the $85,000 was a gift that is now void. And the debt? His lawyer asked. I will eat the debt, I said. But I never want to see him again. If he comes onto my property, I will have him arrested for trespassing. The lawyer nodded. They signed the papers right there. Caleb handed me his key. He did not look at me. He walked out. Courtney followed him, already typing furiously on her phone, probably planning her exit strategy now that the golden goose was dead. My mother stayed behind. She stood up slowly. She looked old. "You didn't have to humiliate him," she said. "He tried to steal my house, Mom," I said. "He tried to ruin me." "He is sick," she said. "He is a predator," I said. "And you helped him." She walked out. I watched her go. I felt nothing. No sadness. No guilt. Just exhaustion. I went home. I changed the locks. I went to the basement. I took a sledgehammer. I smashed the drywall in the HVAC closet. I ripped out the paneling he had installed. I needed to see the damage. I needed to see the concrete. I wanted to erase his touch from my home. It has been 3 months. I haven't heard from Caleb. I heard from a cousin that Courtney left him a week after the deposition. He is living in a motel. My mother calls me once a week, leaving voicemails. She says I am heartless. She says family is everything. She is wrong. Family is not blood. Family is respect. Family is loyalty. Caleb broke that bond the moment he decided to mistake my kindness for weakness. I kept the house. The legal bills cost me $20,000. The $85,000 is gone forever. I am starting over financially at 34. But I have my peace. I have my silence. Yesterday, I received a letter from Silas. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was a single index card. Rats get caught eventually. Good job, kid. I burned it in the sink. I sit on my deck now, drinking a beer. The sun is setting. The fence Caleb fixed is starting to lean. I will fix it myself this weekend. I will tear it down and build a new one. One that I paid for. One that I built. One that keeps the world out. I learned a lesson that cost me over $100,000. It was an expensive education. But I know the curriculum by heart now. Never lend money you cannot afford to lose. Never let anyone live in your house without a lease. And never, ever assume that shared DNA prevents a knife in the back. The house is quiet. It is finally mine. And that is worth every penny. Looking back, the signs were there from the start. The way he hesitated when I asked about his job applications. The way he would change the subject when money came up. The entitlement. It is easy to see it now. It is easy to see that I was not a brother to him, I was a resource. I was a vein to be tapped until it collapsed. I think about the night at the warehouse a lot. I think about what would happen if I had just driven away. If I had let Silas handle it. Caleb would probably be dead. Or maybe he would have found another way. Maybe he would have found another victim. I saved his life, and he tried to take mine. It is a biblical kind of betrayal. Cain and Abel with court filings. I have started dating again. Her name is Lisa. She is a nurse. She has her own place. She knows the story. She asked me if I would ever forgive him. I told her forgiveness is a luxury I cannot afford. Forgiveness opens the door. And I have just spent a fortune changing the locks. I am renovating the guest room. I am turning it into a gym. I tore up the carpet. I painted the walls a dark gray. I removed the bed. There is no space for a guest anymore. Sometimes, late at night, I hear a noise. A creak in the floorboards. For a second, I think it is him. I think he is sneaking into the kitchen to steal food. I think he is coming to apologize. Then I remember. He is gone. The lawsuit is a matter of public record now. Anyone who searches my name can see it. Richards versus Richards. It looks so sterile on paper. It does not capture the screaming matches. It does not capture the feeling of betrayal that sits in your chest like a stone. I bumped into one of his friends at the grocery store last week. A guy named Mike. Mike used to come over and drink my beer while Caleb pretended to work. Mike looked at me like I was the villain. "You really put him on the street, huh?" he said. "He put himself there," I said. "He's family man," Mike said. "That's cold." I didn't argue. I didn't try to explain constructive trusts or promissory estoppel. I just walked away. People believe what they want to believe. They want the simple story. The big brother who turned his back on the struggling little brother. They don't want to hear about the addiction. They don't want to hear about the manipulation. Let them talk. I have the title deed. I have been thinking about selling the house. Moving to a different city. Starting fresh where the walls don't remind me of him. But that feels like running. That feels like letting him win. If I leave, he takes this place from me in spirit. So I stay. I reclaim it one room at a time. I hired a contractor to inspect the basement. He told me the electrical work Caleb did was dangerous. Not up to code. Fire hazard. Whoever did this didn't know what they were doing, the contractor said. You're lucky the place didn't burn down. I laughed. It was perfect. Even his contribution was a trap. Even his sweat equity was a liability. I paid the contractor $5,000 to rip it all out and redo it. I watched them tear down the drywall Caleb had hung. It felt like an exorcism. I am rebuilding my savings. It is slow. The market is different now. But I am making progress. I put a percentage of every paycheck into a new account. I call it the Freedom Fund. It is not for emergencies. It is not for retirement. It is for legal defense. Just in case. Because I know Caleb. I know addicts. He is down now, but he will get desperate again. He will run out of options. He will remember that I have money. He will convince himself that he was wronged. He will come back. And when he does, I will be ready. I have the photos of the notebook. I have the deposition transcript. I have the receipts. I have the timeline. I am not the big brother anymore. I am the plaintiff. I am the defendant. I am the fortress. The sun has gone down completely now. The streetlights are buzzing. A car drives by slowly. I watch it until it turns the corner. It is not him. I finish my beer. I crush the can in my hand. The sound is sharp and final. I walk inside. I lock the door. I check the deadbolt. I check the keypad. I check the camera feed on my phone. Safe. For now, that has to be enough. I walk into the kitchen. I make a sandwich. I eat it standing over the sink. I rinse the plate and put it in the dishwasher immediately. The sink is empty. The house is clean. There is a peace in order. There is a comfort in knowing exactly where everything is. My bank account is lower than it was, but it is mine. No one is siphoning it off. No one is gambling it away on third-quarter spreads. I walk past the basement door. I pause. I can smell the fresh paint from the contractor's work. It smells like chemicals and new wood. It smells clean. I go upstairs. I walk past the guest room. The door is open. The gym equipment sits there, silent and heavy. Iron plates. Steel bars. Things that do not lie. Things that do not betray you. I go to my room. I undress. I get into bed. The sheets are cool. I close my eyes. For the first time in 2 years, I do not dream of warehouses. I do not dream of envelopes filled with lawsuits. I dream of a fence. A tall, sturdy fence made of cedar. I am building it. I am digging the post holes deep. I am pouring the concrete. I am setting the posts. They are straight and true. I nail the pickets up one by one. Bam, bam, bam. The rhythm is steady. The wall grows. On the other side of the fence, there is a forest. It is dark and tangled. I can hear things moving in the brush. I can hear whispers. I can hear weeping. But I do not look over. I do not stop hammering. I build the fence until it surrounds me completely. Until I cannot see the forest. Until I can only see the sky. And in the dream, I am happy. I wake up. It is morning. The sun is shining through the window. The birds are singing. It is a good day. I get up. I make coffee. I sit at the island where he served me the papers. I run my hand over the granite. It is cold and hard. I pull out my phone. I block my mother's number. It is the final step. The last severing of the limb. It hurts. It throbs. But it is necessary to stop the infection. I drink my coffee. I look at the empty chair where he used to sit. Goodbye, brother, I say to the empty room. The room does not answer. And that is the most beautiful sound in the world. I wash the mug. I put on my work boots. I have a fence to build. The hardware store is crowded. Saturday morning. Homeowners and contractors. People building lives. I buy the cedar. I buy the concrete. I buy a new post hole digger. I load the truck. The weight settles the suspension. It feels good. It feels real. I drive home. I see a Honda Civic parked across the street. My heart stops. I slow down. I peer into the car. It is empty. Just a neighbor's guest. I exhale. My hands are gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles are white. The fear is still there. It will be there for a long time. Trauma does not vanish with a court order. It lingers in the nervous system. It waits for a trigger. But I can manage it. I can control it. I pull into the driveway. I unload the wood. The smell of cedar fills the air. It is sharp and earthy. I start digging. The ground is hard. It resists the shovel. I have to put my weight into it. I sweat. My muscles burn. This is real work. This is real equity. I dig the first hole. Then the second. By noon, I have the old fence torn down. The yard is open to the street. I feel exposed. But I keep working. A neighbor walks by. An old man named Mr. Henderson. Big project, he says. Overdue, I say. Doing it yourself? Yeah, I say. Trust is expensive these days. He laughs. He doesn't know the half of it. Looks good, son. Keep at it. I nod. I keep digging. By sunset, the posts are set. They stand like sentinels in the twilight. Gray concrete curing at their bases. I wipe the sweat from my forehead. I look at my work. It is straight. It is strong. I go inside. I shower. I wash the dirt off my skin. I order a pizza. I eat it on the couch watching a movie. No one fights me for the remote. No one complains about the volume. I am lonely. I admit that. The silence is heavy sometimes. But loneliness is the price of safety. And right now, I am willing to pay it. I check my email. There is a message from Harrison. Final judgment entered. Case closed with prejudice. You are clear. I stare at the words. With prejudice. It means he can never bring this claim again. It is dead. I take a screenshot. I save it to 3 different folders. I print it out. I frame it. I hang it in the gym. Right above the squat rack. Motivation. Every time I lift, I will see it. I will remember. I will get stronger. I will get smarter. I am not the victim. I am the survivor. And this is my house. The next morning, I finish the fence. I nail the last picket in place. I stand back. It is perfect. A solid wall of wood. 6 feet high. I walk the perimeter. I check every board. I reach the gate. I install the latch. It is heavy steel. I put a padlock on it. I step inside and lock it. Click. The sound echoes. I am safe. I look up at the house. My house. I smile. It is over. I go inside and start living the rest of my life. The ghost of my brother is gone. The ghost of the debt is gone. Only I remain. And that is enough. I am posting this from a library computer 3 towns over. My lawyer gave me the green light to share the general details now that the indictments are unsealed, but he warned me not to use real names or specific locations. Let's call the company Logie Corp. And my boss Gavin. If you saw Gavin, you wouldn't think he was capable of running a criminal enterprise. You would think he was just another middle management tyrant with a caffeine addiction and a receding hairline. You would be wrong. 3 months ago, I was standing in Gavin's office, watching a vein throb in his forehead. It was 4:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. My phone was buzzing in my pocket. It was the school nurse. Again. My 6-year-old son Leo has a compromised immune system due to complications from a respiratory virus he caught last winter. A common cold for other kids turns into a hospital stay for Leo. I needed to leave. I needed to pick him up, get his nebulizer running, and make sure his oxygen levels didn't drop below the danger zone. Gavin stood between me and the door. He wasn't physically blocking me, but the implication of his posture was clear. He held a performance review file in his hand like a weapon. "If you walk out that door," Gavin said, his voice terrifyingly calm, "don't bother coming back tomorrow. We are in the middle of the Q3 audit. I need bodies in chairs, OP. I need commitment. If your priority is your family, maybe you should be a stay-at-home parent and let the adults handle the logistics." I felt the blood drain from my face. I needed this job. The health insurance was the only thing keeping Leo's treatments from bankrupting me. Gavin knew that. He held it over me like a guillotine blade. I looked at the picture of his own family on his desk. Perfect smiles, perfect teeth, healthy children. I looked back at him. "Leo is sick," I said. "It's an emergency." "It is always an emergency," Gavin countered. "You have used up your PTO. You have used up your sick days. You are dipping into goodwill, and my goodwill account is overdrawn. You leave now, you are fired for job abandonment. Try getting COBRA coverage with no severance." I swallowed the rage. It tasted like battery acid. I made a choice. I sat back down. I texted my sister, begging her to pick Leo up, knowing she would have to leave her own shift early and lose money she couldn't afford to lose. She did it, because she is a saint, but the guilt ate me alive for the next 4 hours. I sat at my desk, staring at spreadsheets I couldn't focus on, listening to Gavin pace around his office. He didn't leave at 5 p.m. He didn't leave at 6 p.m. He stayed watching us, ensuring we ground our souls into the dust for the sake of the Q3 audit. That was the dynamic. He was the warden, we were the inmates. But that night changed everything. That was the night I realized Gavin's obsession with us working late wasn't about productivity. It was about cover. Fast forward 2 weeks. The tension in the office was palpable. Gavin was more erratic than usual. He was sweating through his dress shirts by noon. He would disappear into the server room, a restricted area that usually only IT accessed, and stay there for hours. When he came out, he smelled like ozone and burning plastic. On a Thursday, disaster struck. Leo spiked a fever of 104 at school. My sister was out of town. I had no backup. I didn't ask Gavin for permission this time. I grabbed my keys, marched past his glass-walled office, and headed for the elevator. "Where do you think you are going?" Gavin's voice boomed across the bullpen. I didn't stop. "Hospital. Fire me if you want, but I am leaving." I expected a security escort. I expected a termination email before I reached the ground floor. Neither happened. I spent the next 12 hours in the ER, holding Leo's hand, watching fluids drip into his tiny arm. By 3 a.m., he was stable and sleeping. My mom came to relieve me so I could go home and shower. I checked my email in the hospital parking lot. Nothing from HR. Nothing from Gavin. That was suspicious. Gavin never missed a chance to send a threatening email. I drove toward my apartment, but instinct pulled me toward the office. I told myself I needed to get my laptop so I could work from the hospital if necessary. I told myself I wanted to see if my keycard still worked. But deep down, I think I wanted to confront him. I was running on adrenaline and caffeine and parental fury. The office building is a 4-story concrete slab in an industrial park. Logicorp occupies the 3rd floor and the basement warehouse. I pulled into the lot at 3:45 a.m. It was deserted, except for one car. Gavin's Tesla. It was parked near the loading dock around the back, not in his reserved spot near the front entrance. That was odd. The loading dock is for trucks and logistics staff, not the director of operations. I parked my beat-up sedan on the street, out of sight. I walked to the side entrance. My badge still worked. The reader beeped green, and the heavy door clicked open. I was still employed. The building was silent. The HVAC hummed, a low vibration that you feel in your teeth. I took the stairs to the 3rd floor. I moved quietly, not because I was trying to be stealthy, but because the silence demanded it. When I opened the stairwell door to the 3rd floor, the lights were off. The only illumination came from the emergency exit signs and the blinking LEDs on the routers. I looked toward Gavin's office. Dark. I went to my desk and grabbed my laptop bag. I should have left then. I should have walked out, gone home, and slept. But I heard a sound. Thump. It came from the ventilation ducts? No. It was coming from the floor below. The server room. The server room is technically on the second floor, a mezzanine level that overlooks the main warehouse space. It is climate-controlled, soundproofed, and secured with a biometric lock. I am an inventory coordinator. I don't have access. Gavin does. I walked to the railing of the atrium and looked down. The glass walls of the server room were frosted, but I could see a shadow moving inside. A erratic, jerky shadow. I crept down the stairs to the second floor. The door to the server room was propped open with a heavy fire extinguisher. That was a major violation of protocol. If a fire suppression system triggered, that door needed to seal. I approached the door. The sound grew louder. It wasn't the hum of fans. It was a mechanical whirring, followed by a rhythmic clack clack clack. Like a heavy-duty printer, but louder. I peeked around the doorframe. The server room was freezing. The AC was cranked to the absolute maximum. Rows of black server racks hummed with blue lights. But in the center of the aisle, Gavin had set up a folding table. On the table sat 3 machines. They looked like 3D printers, but more robust, industrial grade. They were churning out small, gray, rectangular blocks. Gavin was standing over them, wearing blue latex gloves and a respirator mask. He picked up one of the gray blocks, inspected it under a magnifying lamp, and then used a darker tool to stamp something onto the side of it. He placed it into a foam-lined shipping case. I squinted. The cases were marked with the Logicorp logo, but they had a secondary sticker, Priority Medical Supply Urgent. I knew that client. We handled logistics for a company that distributed pacemaker components and insulin pump regulators. High-value, high-precision electronics. I watched as Gavin took a legitimate-looking component from a returns bin, a bin filled with defective units sent back by hospitals, and placed it into a vise. He used a power drill to bore a hole into the casing of the medical device. He pulled out a small microchip. Then he took one of the gray blocks he had just printed, inserted the stolen microchip into it, and sealed it up. He wasn't stealing the units. He was harvesting the chips. He was taking the expensive proprietary control chips out of defective, returned medical devices. Then he was printing counterfeit casings, fake parts, shoving the chips inside, and repackaging them as refurbished certified stock. My stomach turned over. These weren't toaster ovens. These were insulin pumps. If the casing failed, or if the chip had been part of a recalled batch, which is why they were returned in the first place, people could die. He was reselling recalled medical waste as certified refurbished hardware. I stepped back, my shoes squeaking on the anti-static floor. Gavin froze. He didn't turn around immediately. He reached toward the table and covered the open shipping case with a cloth. Then he turned, the respirator mask making him look like a giant, panicked insect. "Who is there?" His voice was muffled. I stepped into the light. There was no point in hiding. "It's me, Gavin." He pulled the mask down. His face was pale, his eyes wide and bloodshot. "Up. You are supposed to be at the hospital. And you are supposed to be running a logistics company, not a chop shop for medical devices," I said, my voice shaking. I raised my phone. I hadn't hit record yet, but I bluffed. "I'm streaming this. Live. To the cloud." It was a lie. The signal in the server room was garbage. Gavin laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. "You don't have a signal in here. The walls are lead-lined for RF shielding. Nice try." He took a step toward me. He was holding the power drill. "What are you doing, Gavin?" I asked, backing up toward the door. "Those are returned units. They are defective. You are putting them back in the supply chain." "They aren't defective," he snapped, sounding almost offended. "It's a firmware issue. The hardware is fine. The sensors are platinum grade. Do you know how much these cost? $4,000 a unit. And the manufacturer just shreds them because of a software glitch? It's waste. I am recycling." "You are forging safety certifications," I said. "You are putting people at risk. If one of those fails." "They won't fail," he insisted. "I test them. I am careful. Look at this operation. Does this look sloppy to you?" "It looks illegal," I said. "It pays the bills," Gavin snarled. "The company is under OP. We lost the Amazon contract last month." Corporate hasn't announced it yet, but we are bleeding. I am the only reason you still have a paycheck. I am the only reason you have health insurance for that sick kid of yours. He knew exactly where to hit. I am subsidizing the payroll with this, he said, gesturing to the table. You think the board knows? Of course not. They just see the numbers staying black. I am saving your job. I am saving your son. Don't you bring my son into this, I warned. I am offering you a deal, Gavin said, lowering the drill. Walk away. Forget you saw this. I will approve your PTO. Retroactively. I will give you a raise. 10%. No, 20. You can take all the time you need for Leo. I will cover for you. But if you blow the whistle, this company folds. Immediately. The Fed sees the assets, the accounts freeze, and you are on the street with a sick child and no insurance. Think about it. I stood there, the cold air from the servers blasting against my neck. It was a devil's bargain. Silence for survival. I need to think, I said. You have until morning, Gavin said. Go home. Kiss your son. Look at the medical bills on your counter. Then decide if you want to be a hero or a father. I turned and walked out. He didn't stop me. He knew he had paralyzed me with the truth. I drove back to the hospital. I sat in the plastic chair next to Leo's bed. He was awake, eating lime jello. Hi, Dad, he whispered. Did you go to work? Briefly, I said. I had to check something. Is your boss still mad? He's complicated, I said. I looked at the 4-pump next to Leo's bed. It was a different brand than the ones Gavin was forging, but the principle was the same. What if the pump keeping my son alive had been refurbished by a desperate manager in a basement? What if the sensor failed because someone drilled into the casing at 3 a.m.? I realized then that Gavin wasn't saving the company. He was poisoning the well. Even if his parts worked 99% of the time, that 1% was a death sentence for someone else's child. I couldn't take the deal. But I couldn't just call the police without proof. Gavin would scrub the room. He would destroy the evidence before the cops got a warrant. He would claim I was a disgruntled employee making things up. I needed the shipping logs. I needed to prove where those boxes were going. I went home, showered, and put on my suit. I went back to the office at 8 a.m. Gavin was there, looking fresh, wearing a new shirt. He gave me a curt nod as I walked in. HR approved your leave request, he said loudly, so the rest of the office could hear. Family first, right, OP? He was buying my silence. I sat at my desk. I logged into the inventory system. I had access to shipping, but Gavin had administrative overrides. He had been creating ghost shipments, packages that existed in the physical manifest but were marked as office supplies or archived files in the digital ledger. I needed his password. Gavin was paranoid, but he was also arrogant. He kept a physical notebook in his top drawer. I had seen it 1,000 times. He claimed it was his manifestation journal. At 10 a.m., the fire alarm went off. I didn't pull it. I'm not that cliché. But I did burn a bag of microwave popcorn in the break room for exactly 6 minutes. The smoke was thick, acrid, and enough to trigger the sensitive particle detectors in the hallway. The strobes flashed. The sirens wailed. The office evacuated. Gavin was the fire warden. He had to sweep the floor. He ran out of his office, clipboard in hand, shouting at everyone to take the stairs. I waited in the bathroom until the floor was clear. Then I sprinted to his office. I didn't have much time. The fire department would be here in minutes. I opened his top drawer. The notebook was there. I flipped through it. Affirmations. Calorie counts. And on the back page, a list of alphanumeric codes. Server admin, GVN_L0G1. I typed it into his computer. Access granted. I didn't look for emails. I looked for the shipping history of the Priority Medical account. I found the discrepancy immediately. The weight. The official returns weighed 2.4 pounds. The outgoing refurbished units weighed 2.1 pounds. The new casing material was lighter than the original medical-grade plastic. I exported the data to a thumb drive. Then I went deeper. I found a folder labeled PDIST. Distribution list. It wasn't going back to the manufacturer. It was going to third-party medical supply wholesalers in Eastern Europe and South America. Gray market. He was selling them internationally to avoid U.S. regulators. I heard the heavy thud of boots in the hallway. Firefighters. I pulled the drive. I closed the drawer. I ran to the stairwell and blended in with the crowd standing in the parking lot. Gavin found me outside. He looked at me, scanning my face. He suspected something. "Where were you?" he asked. "I didn't see you come down." "Bathroom," I said. Popcorn burned. Scared the hell out of me. He stared at me for a long time. "Go home, OP. Take the week." I went to my car. I didn't go home. I went to the FBI field office downtown. I sat in a waiting room for 2 hours. Finally, an agent listened to me. I showed him the drive. I described the server room setup. I explained the weight discrepancies. The agent, a guy named Miller, looked at the data. He made a phone call. Then another. "If this is accurate," Miller said, "this is significant. But we can't just raid them on a spreadsheet. We need physical evidence." "He's running the machines at night," I said. "He's there right now, probably cleaning up from last night, or prepping the next batch." "We can't get a warrant that fast," Miller said. "But we can do a regulatory compliance check. We can contact the FDA. If they have reason to believe counterfeit devices are on site, they have broad powers." It took 2 days. 2 days of agonizing silence. I stayed home with Leo. I ignored Gavin's emails asking if I was resting up. On Wednesday night, my phone rang. It was Miller. "Turn on the news," he said. I flipped on the local channel. A helicopter shot showed the LogiCorp building surrounded by black SUVs and hazardous material trucks. The cheerin' read, "Federal raid at local logistics firm. Counterfeit medical ring busted." I watched as they led Gavin out in handcuffs. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket. He looked small, defeated. And then for a split second, he looked directly at the news camera. He knew. The fallout was massive. LogiCorp shut down within a week. The assets were frozen. I lost my job immediately. The insurance was gone. But here is the part that makes this a win. Because I was the whistleblower, and because the bust resulted in the recovery of millions of dollars in fraud, I was eligible for a percentage of the seized assets under the False Claims Act. It takes time to process, years, usually. However, the medical manufacturer, the one Gavin was ripping off, reached out to me. Their legal team wanted my testimony to ensure Gavin went away for a long time. In exchange, they offered me a position. A remote position. As a compliance auditor. The pay is better. The insurance is platinum tier. It covers everything Leo needs. I am writing this from the library because I had to meet with my lawyer to sign the final deposition papers. Gavin is looking at 20 years. Federal prison doesn't have a goodwill account. I walked past the old office building yesterday. It's empty. The LogiCorp sign is taken down. I thought I would feel guilty. I thought I would feel bad about the other employees losing their jobs. And I do to an extent. But then I look at Leo, breathing easy, no longer dependent on a system that might be rigged by a guy with a power drill in a basement, and I sleep just fine. If your boss threatens to fire you for taking care of your family, let them. Then look closely at what they are doing in the dark. You might just save a life. My stepdad always said I'd never amount to anything. 20 years later, he asked me for money, and I finally said what I wanted to say my whole life. The checkbook felt heavy in my pocket. It was ridiculous because a checkbook weighs only a few ounces, but the weight came from the implication of what was written inside it. $45,000. That was the number my mother had whispered over the phone, her voice cracking with a specific kind of desperation that only surfaces when the walls are finally closing in. She did not ask for it directly. She never did. She just laid out the tragedy of their circumstances like a buffet and waited for me to pick up a plate. But this time, the tragedy wasn't a broken water heater or a transmission failure. It was everything. It was the end of the line. And sitting across from me at the sticky table of a mid-range chain steakhouse was the man who had guaranteed, with absolute certainty, that I would be the one begging him for scraps. Gary looked smaller than I remembered. The bitterness that had preserved him like formaldehyde for 2 decades was finally starting to rot him from the inside out. He was chewing a piece of gristle, staring at me with those watery, judgmental blue eyes, waiting for me to save him. I stared back. I did not blink. I touched the checkbook in my pocket, feeling the sharp corner of the vinyl cover. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I had rehearsed this moment in the shower, in traffic, and in the quiet hours of the morning for 20 years. But before I tell you what happened at that table, you have to understand why the $45,000 meant nothing to me, and why the look on his face meant everything. You have to understand the architecture of hate that Gary built, brick by brick, starting from the day I turned 10. Part 1. The Architect of Failure. My biological father died when I was 3. I have no memory of him, only a collection of photos where he looks tired but kind. My mother was a professional victim. I do not say that to be cruel. I say it because it is the most accurate descriptor of her personality. She moved through life looking for a current to sweep her away so she wouldn't have to swim. When I was 10, that current was Gary. Gary was a shift manager at a corrugated box factory. To a 10-year-old, he seemed enormous. He drove a Ford F-150 that he washed every Sunday, and he had a mustache that he groomed with a tiny comb he kept in his shirt pocket. He moved into our small 2-bedroom house 3 months after meeting my mother. The first week was fine. He bought me a baseball glove. He took us for pizza. It was the honeymoon phase of the invasion. The shift happened on a Tuesday. I remember it was a Tuesday because that was the day I had trash duty. I had forgotten to take the cans out to the curb before school. When I came home, the kitchen smelled like garbage because the bag had leaked. Gary was sitting at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper. He didn't look up when I walked in. He just pointed at the trash can. "You like living in filth?" he asked. His voice was calm, conversational. "I forgot," I said. "I'll take it out now." "Don't bother," he said. "I already did it. I did your job for you." That's going to be a theme in your life, isn't it? People cleaning up your messes. I was 10. I didn't know how to respond to that. I just stood there, my backpack heavy on my shoulders. "Sit down," Gary said. I sat. "Your mother tells me you want to be an architect when you grow up," he said. He folded the newspaper precisely in half. "Yes," I said. I loved drawing houses. I had a sketchbook full of floor plans. Gary laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was a soft, dry chuckle, like dry leaves skittering on pavement. "Architects are smart, kid. They have discipline. They remember to take out the trash. You're a laborer. I can see it in your hands. I can see it in the way you stand. You're going to be sweeping floors, not designing buildings. And that's fine. The world needs sweepers. But don't fill your head with garbage you can't achieve. It's embarrassing." That was the first brick. Over the next 8 years, Gary refined his technique. He never hit me. He was too smart for that. He knew that bruises heal and leave evidence. Instead, he targeted my sense of reality. He specialized in the subtle dismantling of hope. When I brought home a report card with 3 as an AB in math, he didn't congratulate me. He stared at the B. "See," he said, tapping the paper. "This is your ceiling. You worked hard for those A's, didn't you? But the B shows your natural limit. You're average. The sooner you accept that, the happier you'll be. Stop trying to punch above your weight class." When I made the varsity soccer team as a sophomore, Gary refused to come to the games. He told my mother it was a waste of gas to watch me run around in circles. "He's not going to turn pro, Linda," I heard him say through the thin walls of my bedroom. "Why act like he is? You're setting him up for disappointment. I'm the only one in this house who loves him enough to tell him the truth." That was his catchphrase. I'm the realist. He wore it like armor. Any cruelty was justified because he was just preparing me for the real world. The real world, according to Gary, was a hostile, miserable place where people like me were destined to fail. He projected his own stagnation onto me. He had been a shift manager for 15 years. He hated his boss. He hated his life. And he needed to believe that the system was rigged, because if the system wasn't rigged, then his lack of success was his own fault. By convincing me that I was destined for mediocrity, he validated his own existence. The incident that cemented my hatred occurred when I was 16. I had saved up for 6 months to buy a cheap, beat-up Honda Civic from a neighbor. I worked weekends landscaping, mowing lawns in the blistering heat until my hands were blistered and calloused. I bought the car for $800. It needed a new alternator and the seats were torn, but it was mine. It was freedom. I spent a Saturday afternoon in the driveway, replacing the alternator. I had a manual open on the fender. I was dirty, sweating, and happy. Gary came out with a beer in his hand. He watched me struggle with a bolt for 5 minutes without saying a word. "You're stripping the thread," he said finally. "I'm not," I grunted, pushing on the wrench. "You are. You're turning it the wrong way. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Jesus, how do you make it through the day?" I stopped and looked at him. "I'm loosening it to get the old one off." "You're doing it wrong," he said, taking a sip of beer. "But go ahead. Break it. Then you'll have a 2,000-pound paperweight. Which is about right for you." I ignored him. I got the bolt off. I replaced the alternator. When I went to start the car, it cranked but wouldn't turn over. Gary laughed. He had been waiting for this. "Told you. You probably shorted the starter. Stick to mowing lawns, kid. Mechanical work requires a brain." He walked back inside. I sat in the driver's seat, fighting back tears of frustration. I checked the manual again. I checked my connections. Everything looked right. I tried again. Nothing. I spent 4 hours troubleshooting. It was dark when I finally found the problem. Gary had come out while I was in the bathroom and pulled the fuse for the fuel pump. I found the fuse in the grass near the driveway. He had sabotaged me just to be right. I walked into the living room, holding the fuse. He was watching TV. "You pulled the fuse," I said, my voice shaking. He didn't look away from the screen. "I taught you a lesson in troubleshooting. Always check the simple things first. You spent 4 hours on a 5-minute problem because you're arrogant. You think you know everything. You're welcome." I wanted to hit him. I wanted to smash his face in. But I knew that was what he wanted. He wanted me to lose control so he could justify kicking me out. "I'm not going to fail," I said quietly. Gary finally looked at me. He smiled, and it was a genuine, pitying smile. "Oh, you are. You absolutely are. And when you do, don't come crying to me. Because I won't help you. I'm telling you this now so you can save yourself the embarrassment. You are nothing special. You are nothing at all." Part 2. The Wilderness. I left the day I turned 18. I didn't have a plan, but I knew I couldn't spend another night under the same roof as him. I packed my clothes into 2 garbage bags and loaded them into the Honda. My mother stood in the driveway, crying. "He doesn't mean it," she sobbed. "He just wants you to be tough. Please don't go. You have nowhere to live." "I'll figure it out," I said. Gary stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame. He looked bored. "Let him go, Linda. He'll be back in a week. He'll run out of gas money and he'll come crawling back. Keep his room ready, but don't wash the sheets. He doesn't deserve clean sheets for quitting." "I will never come back," I told him. "Sure, kid. See you next Tuesday." I drove away. I didn't look back. The first year was hell. Gary was almost right. I was unprepared. I had $300 and a car that smelled like oil. I slept in the back seat of the Honda parked in Walmart parking lots. I showered at the local YMCA using a guest pass I forged until they caught me and banned me. I ate peanut butter out of the jar and day-old bread from the bakery outlet. But every time I felt like giving up, every time the hunger cramps made me double over, I heard Gary's voice. "See you next Tuesday." I got a job at a warehouse, loading trucks on the night shift. It was brutal work. My back ached constantly. My fingers were perpetually swollen. But I showed up 10 minutes early every single shift. I volunteered for overtime. I swept the floors when there were no trucks to load. I wasn't driven by ambition. I was driven by spite. Spite is a powerful fuel. It burns dirty, but it burns hot. There was a supervisor named Saul. Saul was everything Gary wasn't. He was a massive man, an ex-Marine with a scar running down his cheek, but he was fair. He watched me for 3 months. One night, during a break, Saul sat down next to me on the loading dock. I was eating my usual dinner, a can of cold ravioli. "You work like you're running from something," Saul said. I'm just working, I said. You're smart, Saul said. I see you organizing the pallets. You group them by destination code before the trucks even arrive. Saves the drivers 20 minutes. Who taught you that? Nobody. It just makes sense. You want to load trucks for the rest of your life? No. Good. There's an opening in dispatch. Data entry, logistics. Pays $2 more an hour. Air conditioning. You want it? I looked at him. I don't have a degree. I don't care about a piece of paper. I care that you show up and you use your brain. Report to the office Monday at 0800. That was the crack in the door. I kicked it open. I took the dispatch job. I learned the software in 2 days. I started finding inefficiencies in the routing. I automated the driver schedules using a spreadsheet macro I learned from a library book. Within 6 months, I was running the floor. I moved out of my car and into a studio apartment. It was the size of a closet and smelled like curry, but it had a lock on the door and a bed. I slept for 14 hours the first night. I didn't call my mother for 2 years. When I finally did, the conversation was brief. Are you okay? She asked. I'm fine. I'm working. Gary asks about you. No, he doesn't. He says he hopes you're learning the value of $1. I am. I hung up. I knew what Gary was actually saying. He was predicting my crash. He was waiting for the phone call where I asked for money. I vowed he would die waiting. Part 3, The Ascent. My 20s were a blur of work. I didn't date. I didn't have hobbies. I worked. I took night classes at the community college, paying for them in cash. I got my associate's degree, then transferred to the State University for my bachelor's in supply chain management. I worked full-time while taking a full course load. I slept 4 hours a night. I drank coffee until my hands shook. I became obsessed with optimization. If I could optimize a supply chain, I could optimize my life. I cut out everything that didn't contribute to the goal. The goal was simple: total independence. I wanted to reach a point where no human being on earth had leverage over me. By 25, I was a regional manager for a logistics firm. By 30, I was a consultant. I started my own firm at 32. We specialized in fixing broken supply chains for mid-sized manufacturers. I bought a house. It wasn't a mansion, but it was modern, clean, and everything worked. When a light bulb burned out, I changed it. When the water heater broke, I hired a professional to fix it immediately. I paid my bills the day they arrived. I kept tabs on Gary and my mother through a distant aunt. The news was always grim. Gary lost his job at the box factory due to management politics, he yelled at a supervisor. He bounced between jobs: security guard, delivery driver, handyman. He was fired from all of them. He started gambling. Video poker at the gas station. Scratch-offs. Then the casino. They refinanced their house. Then they took out a second mortgage. Then they maxed out their credit cards. My mother called me periodically. She never asked for money directly, but the hints became heavier. Gary's back is hurting him so bad, she would say. He can't work, and the disability checks haven't started yet. We're eating rice and beans this week. I'm sorry to hear that, I would say. My voice was cold. I had practiced this coldness. It was a shield. It's just, the electric bill is so high this month. That's tough, Mom. Maybe you should turn down the AC. They're going to take the house, she said. Who? The IRS. And the bank. Gary. Gary didn't pay the property taxes for 5 years. And he forged my signature on a loan. They sent a notice. We have 30 days to come up with $45,000 or they auction the house. I sat in my ergonomic office chair, looking out at the city skyline. I felt a surge of triumph so potent it tasted like iron in my mouth. This was it. The prophecy had inverted. 45,000, I repeated. We don't have it, she sobbed. We have nothing. He's broken. He's crying, honey. He's scared. We're going to be homeless. Put him on the phone. What? Put Gary on the phone. There was a muffled conversation. Then Gary's voice came on the line. It sounded old. Scratchy. Hello. Mom says you need money. It's a temporary liquidity issue, Gary said. He was still trying to use big words to sound in control. The government screwed us. I have a lawsuit pending that's going to pay out huge, but I need a bridge loan. A bridge loan, I said. Right. Look, kid. We are family. Family helps each other. I raised you. I put a roof over your head for 8 years. You did, I said. I remember. So? Can you help us? Your mother is a wreck. I want to see you, I said. I want you to drive to the city. Meet me for dinner. Bring the paperwork. The city? That's an hour drive. My truck isn't running great. Figure it out. Or lose the house. Tuesday. 7 p.m. Longhorn Steakhouse. I hung up. Part 4, the dinner. I arrived 15 minutes early. I wore a tailored suit. Not a flashy one, but the kind that whispers money. High thread count. Perfect fit. I wore a watch that cost more than Gary's F-150. I sat in a booth that faced the door. I wanted to watch them walk in. They arrived 10 minutes late. They looked like ghosts. My mother was thin, her hair dyed a brittle box kit blonde that did nothing to hide the gray. She wore a floral blouse that I recognized from high school. Gary was worse. He had lost weight, but in all the wrong places. His neck was scrawny, but his gut hung over his belt. His famous mustache was white and uneven. He walked with a limp. He wore a polo shirt with a stain on the collar and jeans that were frayed at the hems. They stopped at the host stand. I waved. They walked over. Gary didn't look at me. He looked at the tablecloth. He looked at the silverware. He looked everywhere except my eyes. Hello, Mom, I said. I stood up and hugged her. She felt fragile, like a bird made of dried twigs. You look good, she said, her eyes scanning my suit. You look so professional. Hello, Gary, I said. I didn't offer my hand. Gary grunted. Traffic was hell. City planners in this town are morons. Sit down, I said. We ordered. I ordered a ribeye, rare. Gary ordered the cheapest burger on the menu. My mother ordered a side salad. Order a meal, Mom, I said. I'm paying. Oh no, I'm not that hungry. Get the salmon. You like salmon. She looked at Gary. He nodded slightly. Permission granted. She ordered the salmon. We ate in silence for a while. The air was thick with unspoken history. Every clink of a fork against a plate sounded like a gunshot. Finally, Gary wiped his mouth with a napkin. He cleared his throat. So, he said. Your mother told you the situation. She did. You didn't pay your taxes. It's not that simple, Gary said, his voice rising. The assessment was wrong. They hiked the value of the property up by 40%. It's criminal. I refused to pay it on principle. I was protesting. You were protesting by not paying your taxes for 5 years? I asked. That's not a protest, Gary. That's tax evasion. I was building a case, he snapped. Then he winced and rubbed his temple. The fight drained out of him. Look. It doesn't matter. They won. The system always wins against the little guy. Now they want the back taxes plus penalties and interest. And the bank called the loan because of the lien. $45,000, I said. Yeah. Give or take. And you don't have it. I told you. My liquidity is tied up in. Stop, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through his bullshit like a laser. Stop talking about liquidity. Stop talking about lawsuits. You're broke. You have $0. You have negative dollars. Admit it. Gary's face turned red. You don't talk to me like that. I'm the man of the house. You're a man losing his house, I said. I'm the man buying dinner. My mother put her hand on my arm. Please. Don't fight. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the checkbook. I placed it on the table. Gary's eyes locked onto it. The hunger in his expression was naked. It was disgusting. You said I'd never amount to anything, I said. Gary tried to smile. It was a ghastly, grimacing thing. I was motivating you. It was reverse psychology. And look. It worked. You did good, kid. I pushed you. I knew you had it in you, but you needed a fire lit under your ass. I laughed. It was a cold, harsh sound. Is that the narrative now? You were the secret architect of my success. I was hard on you, Gary said, leaning forward. Sure. I was. But the world is hard. I made you tough. You made me hate you, I said. That's different. Hate is a powerful motivator, Gary said, shrugging. Whatever gets the job done. The point is, you made it. And we're family. And we're in trouble. If we lose the house, we have nowhere to go. Your mother. She can't handle a shelter. She's not strong like us. He was trying to bond with me. He was trying to create a us-men dynamic to exclude my mother and manipulate my ego. I opened the checkbook. I took out a pen. Who do I make it out to? I asked. Me, Gary said quickly. Or the bank. You can write it to me. I'll deposit it and handle the payments. It's cleaner that way. I wrote the date. I wrote Gary Smith on the line. I wrote $45,000 in the box. I wrote 45,000/100 on the line. Gary was practically vibrating. He was already spending the money in his head. He was thinking about how he could pay the taxes and maybe keep $5,000 for himself to go to the casino. I could see the gears turning. I tore the check out of the book. I held it between my index finger and thumb. Here it is, I said. The solution to all your problems. Gary reached for it. I pulled it back. I have a question first, I said. Anything, Gary said. Ask me anything. Do you remember my 16th birthday? Gary blinked. What? No. That was 20 years ago. I remember, I said. I wanted to go to the movies with my friends. You told me I couldn't go because I hadn't mowed the lawn. But I had mowed the lawn. You said I missed a spot behind the shed. I went out and checked. There was no spot. You just wanted to keep me home. You wanted to exert control. I don't remember that, Gary said. You're holding on to petty stuff. Do you remember the alternator? I asked. When you pulled the fuse? Gary looked away. I told you, that was a lesson in troubleshooting. No, I said. That was malice. That was you being a small, jealous man who couldn't stand to see a teenager succeed at a simple mechanical task because you felt threatened. You were threatened by a 16-year-old boy. I wasn't threatened. Gary hissed. I was the adult. You were a bully, I said. And you were wrong. You told me I was a laborer. You told me I'd be sweeping floors. You told me I had a ceiling. You told me I was nothing. I looked at the check. Then I looked at Gary. I am the CEO of my own company, I said. I have assets you can't even count. I have a life that is so far beyond your comprehension that it scares you. And I did it all in spite of you. Not because of you. You were an obstacle. You were a weight I had to drag up the mountain. Okay, Gary said, his voice trembling. Okay. You win. You're the big man. You proved me wrong. I admit it. I was wrong. Is that what you want to hear? I was wrong. You're a success. I'm a failure. Please. Give me the check. He was begging. The realist was begging. I looked at my mother. She was crying silently into her napkin. Mom, I said. I can help you. But not him. She looked up. What? I will buy the house, I said. I will pay off the lien. I will put the deed in my name. You can live there rent-free for the rest of your life. Her eyes widened with hope. But, I continued, Gary has to go. The table went silent. The background noise of the restaurant, the clatter of plates, the murmur of conversation, seemed to fade away. Excuse me. Gary whispered. You have to divorce him, I said to my mother. You have to kick him out. If you do that, I save the house. I pay for your groceries. I pay for your medical bills. I take care of you. But he gets nothing. He leaves with the clothes on his back, just like I did. Gary slammed his hand on the table. You can't do that. She's my wife. She's your hostage, I said calmly. You've dragged her down with you for 20 years. You've drained her savings, ruined her credit, and isolated her from her son. I'm offering her a lifeboat. But there's only room for one. I looked at my mother. It's your choice, Mom. You can keep the house and lose the husband who treats you like garbage. Or you can keep the husband and live in a homeless shelter. Because he's not going to fix this. He can't. He's incompetent. My mother looked at Gary. Then she looked at me. She looked at the check in my hand. Linda, Gary said. He's bluffing. He's a cruel, vindictive little bastard. Tell him. My mother took a deep breath. She looked at Gary, really looked at him, maybe for the first time in years. She saw the stained shirt. The cruelty in his eyes. The weakness. He's not bluffing, she said softly. Linda. Gary shouted. People at nearby tables turned to look. I want the house, she whispered. Gary recoiled as if she had slapped him. You ungrateful. I'm tired, Gary, she said. I'm so tired of being broke. I'm tired of your gambling. I'm tired of your mean streak. She looked at me. If I leave him, you'll really pay for everything? Everything, I promised. I'll hire a lawyer for the divorce. You won't have to lift a finger. She nodded. Tears streamed down her face, but her jaw was set. Okay. No. Gary stood up. No. I'm not leaving. It's my house. It's the bank's house, I reminded him. And soon it will be mine. I held up the check for $45,000. Gary reached for it again, a desperate lunge. I ripped the check in half. Then I ripped the halves. I dropped the confetti onto his half-eaten burger. I'm not giving you money, Gary, I said. I'm buying my mother's freedom. Gary stared at the torn paper. His face went purple. He looked like he was going to have a stroke. He sputtered, trying to form words, but nothing came out. The realist had run out of reality to hide behind. Get out, I said. You can't order me around, he snarled. I'm paying for dinner, I said. Get out of my sight. Walk home. It'll give you time to think about where you're going to sleep tonight. Gary looked at my mother. Linda, are you coming? My mother picked up her fork and took a bite of salmon. She didn't look at him. Gary stood there for a long moment, swaying slightly. He looked stripped. Naked. He was a bully without a victim. He turned and limped out of the restaurant. I watched him go. I watched him walk through the glass doors and into the parking lot. I saw him walk past my sleek luxury sedan and disappear into the darkness. I turned back to my mother. She was trembling. It's going to be okay, I said. Eat your salmon. Part 5, The Aftermath. That was 6 months ago. I kept my word. I paid off the tax lien. I bought the house from the bank. I put the deed in a trust. My mother filed for divorce. It was messy. Gary tried to fight it, demanding alimony, but he had no money for a lawyer and my legal team crushed him. They uncovered his hidden gambling debts and used them to prove financial infidelity. He walked away with nothing but his truck and his clothes. My mother is different now. She's gained weight. She smiles. She joined a gardening club. She visited me last weekend and we cooked dinner together in my kitchen. We're rebuilding. It's slow work, but the foundation is there. As for Gary, I heard through the grapevine that he's living in a rented room above a garage in the next town over. He works part-time at a hardware store. Last week, I had to go to that hardware store for a specific type of hinge I couldn't find anywhere else. I didn't know he worked there. I walked down the aisle and saw him. He was stocking shelves. He wore a red vest that was too tight. He looked old. Broken. He saw me. He froze. He held a box of screws in his hand. I walked up to him. I needed him to know that I wasn't afraid of him. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Excuse me, I said. Do you know where the cabinet hinges are? Gary stared at me. His mouth opened and closed. Aisle 4, he rasped. Thanks, I said. I started to walk away. I was right, he called out. I stopped and turned back. What? I said I was right, Gary said, his voice gaining a little bit of that old pathetic edge. You became a success. I made you. I looked at this sad, delusional man. I realized that he would never change. He would take his narrative to the grave because it was the only thing keeping him from putting a pistol in his mouth. He needed to believe he was the hero of my story, because otherwise, he was just the villain of his own. I smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. A smile of absolute pity. Gary, I said, I don't think about you at all. I walked away. I bought my hinges. I went home to my clean, quiet house. I sat on my deck and watched the sun go down. I thought about the 10-year-old boy who forgot to take out the trash. I thought about the 16-year-old boy crying over a fuse. I took a sip of whiskey. You amounted to something, I told the boy in my head. You amounted to everything. And the silence that answered me was beautiful. That should be the end of the story, but life rarely offers such clean-cut endings without a little bit of residual mess. The divorce process, while financially handled by my lawyers, required a level of emotional labor for me that I hadn't anticipated. My mother was free, yes, but she was also institutionalized. She had lived in Gary's reality for 20 years. She didn't know how to operate a debit card without asking permission. She flinched when she dropped a spoon. The first month after the dinner, I practically lived at her house. My house, technically. I hired a contractor to come in and tear out the carpet that smelled like Gary's cheap cigarettes. We repainted the walls. I bought her new furniture. I wanted to erase every physical trace of him. One Saturday, while cleaning out the garage, I found a box tucked away on a high shelf. It was labeled miscellaneous. Inside, buried under old tax returns and appliance manuals, I found my old sketchbook. The one I had when I was 10. The one I thought I had lost. I opened it. The pages were yellowed and brittle. There were my clumsy drawings of dream houses. Castles with moats. Skyscrapers with landing pads. And on the back of the last page, there was a note written in blue ballpoint pen. Don't quit. You're good at this. Dad. It wasn't Gary's handwriting. It was my biological father's. I recognized it from the few old birthday cards my mother had kept. He must have written it before he died, or maybe my mother had saved it from him and put it there. I sat on the concrete floor of the garage and cried. Not the angry tears of my teenage years, but deep, heaving sobs of grief. I realized that Gary had stolen more than just my confidence. He had stolen the memory of a father who actually believed in me. He had overlaid his voice on top of my father's until I couldn't hear the encouragement anymore. But I had the book now. I had the proof. I took the sketchbook inside. I showed it to my mother. She touched the handwriting and smiled a sad, watery smile. He loved you so much, she said. He used to sit with you for hours while you drew. Why did you let Gary treat me like that? I asked. It was the question I had avoided asking, the final barrier between us. I was scared, she said simply. I was weak. I thought I needed him to survive. I thought he was fixing you. I thought maybe I was too soft, and you needed a man to toughen you up. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. I forgave her. It wasn't instant, and it wasn't easy. But holding on to the anger towards her felt heavy, and I was tired of carrying heavy things. The business continued to grow. I started a scholarship fund for kids who wanted to go into trade schools or engineering but couldn't afford it. I called it the Builder's Grant. I didn't name it after myself. I just wanted to be the person for them that Saul had been for me. Speaking of Saul, I tracked him down a few months ago. He was retired, living in Florida. I flew down to see him. We sat on his porch and drank iced tea. You did good, kid, he said, slapping my back. I had help, I said. We all have help, Saul said. And we all have hurdles. The trick is knowing the difference. I told him about Gary. About the check. About the hardware store. Saul laughed. A deep, booming laugh. You told him you don't think about him? That's cold. That's the best revenge there is. Indifference. Hate is still a connection. Indifference is a severed line. He was right. I returned home with a lightness I had never felt before. The ghost of Gary was gone. The The voice in my head that criticized every mistake, that whispered failure every time I took a risk, was finally silent. I am writing this not to brag about my money. The money is just a tool. I am writing this for anyone who is currently living with a Gary. Anyone who is being told day after day that they are broken, that they are limited, that they are destined for mediocrity. They are lying to you. They are projecting their own failures onto you because your potential terrifies them. They know that if you realize your own strength, you will leave them behind. So leave them behind. Pack your bags. Sleep in your car if you have to. Eat peanut butter. Work the night shift. Grind until your hands bleed. Do whatever you have to do to get away from the voice that tells you you're nothing. Because you are not nothing. You are everything they wish they could be. And one day, 20 years from now, when they are sitting across from you asking for a lifeline, you will have the pleasure of looking them in the eye and seeing them for what they truly are. Small. And you will stand up, walk out the door, and never look back. Part 6. The Long Tale of Recovery. It would be easy to end the narrative there, with the philosophical mic drop. But Reddit appreciates the gritty details, the what happened next that spans the months following the climax. Life doesn't stop just because the villain has been vanquished. Recovering from a toxic upbringing is like recovering from a physical injury. The cast comes off, but the muscles are atrophied. You have to relearn how to walk. For me, that meant addressing my workaholism. Gary had programmed me to believe that my value was solely derived from my output. If I wasn't working, I wasn't worthy of existence. This mindset made me rich, but it also made me lonely. I started therapy about 3 months after the divorce was finalized. My therapist, a sharp woman named Dr. Eris, pinpointed the issue in our second session. "You're still reacting to him," she said. "You built a fortune to prove him wrong. Now that you've proved him wrong, who are you building it for?" I didn't have an answer. "You need to find out who you are when you're not fighting a war," she said. So, I started trying to live. I took weekends off. I bought a kayak. I went out onto the lake early in the morning, not to optimize my rowing stroke or to time my laps, but just to sit in the water and watch the mist rise. It was terrifying. The silence in my head was loud. Without the constant drive to prove, I felt adrift. But slowly, I started to enjoy it. I started to enjoy the feeling of just existing. I also started dating. I met a woman named Elena at a coffee shop. She was an architect. The irony was not lost on me. On our third date, I told her about my childhood. I told her about the sweeping floors comment. She reached across the table and took my hand. "He was jealous," she said. "He saw a creative spark in you and he wanted to stomp it out because he didn't have one." "I know," I said. "Do you still draw?" she asked. "No. Not in years." "You should start again." So I did. I bought a new sketchbook. I didn't draw houses this time. I drew weird, abstract shapes. I drew the lake. I drew Elena. The drawings weren't professional quality, but they were mine. They were expressions of a self that Gary hadn't managed to kill. 6 months ago, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. The handwriting was shaky. It was from Gary. I debated throwing it away unopened. Saul's advice about indifference rang in my ears. But curiosity is a powerful drug. I opened it. It was a single page of lined notebook paper. "Kid. I'm sick. Doctors say it's the liver. Years of bad living, I guess. I'm alone here. I have a lot of time to think. I wanted to write to you and tell you that I'm sorry. Not for the money. I don't want your money anymore. I'm sorry for the alternator. I remember it now. I did pull the fuse. I was drunk. I was angry at my boss, and I saw you fixing that car and you looked so happy. I just wanted to ruin it. That's the truth. You were a good kid. I was a bad father. I know it's too late, but I wanted to say it. Gary." I read the letter 3 times. A younger version of me would have felt vindication. See? I was right. He admitted it. Another version of me would have felt anger. Too little, too late, old man. But the version of me that sat in my kitchen that morning, with the sun streaming in and the smell of Elena's coffee in the air, felt something else. I felt pity. But not the contemptuous kind. Just a quiet sadness for a wasted life. Gary had spent his entire existence being miserable and making others miserable, and now he was dying alone in a rented room, regretting a fuse he pulled 20 years ago. I didn't reply to the letter. There was nothing to say. I didn't wish him harm, but I didn't owe him absolution. His apology was for him, to clear his conscience before the end. It wasn't for me. I had already cleared my own slate. I folded the letter and put it in the shredder. I watched the paper turn into ribbons. Then I went into the living room. Elena was looking at blueprints for a new library she was designing. My mother was on the patio, repotting a fern. Who was the letter from? Elena asked, looking up. Nobody, I said. Just junk mail. I sat down next to her. Can I help you with that elevation? Sure, she said, sliding the paper over. I'm stuck on the roofline. I picked up a pencil. I looked at the lines. I saw the structure. I saw the potential. What if we opened this up? I said, sketching a line. Let more light in. I like that, she said. More light is good. Yeah, I said. It is. I looked out the window at my mother. She was humming to herself. The sun was shining. The house was paid for. The ghosts were gone. I was 39 years old. I had amounted to something. But more importantly, I was finally truly free. Author's note: since posting this, I've had a lot of DMs asking about the tax lien specifics and how I structured the trust for my mom. I'm not a lawyer or a financial advisor, so please consult professionals. But generally speaking, separating the asset, the house, from the liability, Gary, was the key move. By buying the house directly from the bank/payoff, I bypassed the marital asset conversation to a degree, though the divorce court still had to sign off on the distribution. Because the house had negative equity due to the debts, Gary couldn't claim half of it. It was a strategic play. If you are in a similar situation, get a shark of a lawyer. It's worth every penny. Update: 1 year later. I didn't think I'd come back to this account, but I felt like this story needed one final period. Gary died 2 weeks ago. The hospital called my mother because she was still listed as his emergency contact in some old file they hadn't updated. She called me. Do you want to go to the funeral? She asked. I thought about it. I really did. No, I said. Do you? No, she said. There was no funeral. The state handled the cremation. There was no obituary. He just ceased to be. It was anticlimactic. I expected to feel a massive shift in the universe, a clap of thunder, something. But the world just kept turning. The sun came up. The traffic on the highway kept moving. His death confirmed what I had told him in the hardware store. He didn't matter. The fear he had instilled in me was a smoke monster, large and terrifying, but ultimately without substance. I took the day off work when I heard the news. I drove to the old neighborhood. I parked in front of the house where I grew up. The new owners had painted it blue. There was a swing set in the yard. A kid was running around with a superhero cape on. I watched him run. He fell down. He scraped his knee. He started to cry. His dad came out of the garage. He didn't yell. He didn't mock him. He picked the kid up. He brushed off his knees. He hugged him. "You're okay, buddy," the dad said. I could hear him through the open car window. "You're tough. Shake it off. Try again." The kid stopped crying. He nodded. He ran back to the swing set. I smiled. The cycle was broken. Not just in my family, but in that house. The curse of Gary had been lifted from the soil. I started the car and drove away. I had a meeting to get to. I had a life to live. And for the first time in my entire life, the rearview mirror was just a mirror. It wasn't a reminder of what was chasing me. It was just showing me where I had been. I turned onto the highway, accelerated, and merged into the fast lane. The road ahead was wide open. And I drove. My mom left me out of her will after I took care of her for years, until her lawyer revealed the letter she hid from everyone. I am sitting in the parking lot of a frantic 24-hour diner 3 towns over from where I grew up. My entire life is currently packed into the trunk of a 10-year-old Honda Civic. I have $300 in my checking account and no job. I have no home. According to the piece of paper my brother Derek threw at my chest 4 hours ago, I am officially a trespasser in the house where I spent the last 6 years wiping bottoms, blending food, and watching the woman who gave birth to me slowly forget how to speak. They think they won. Derek and my sister, Alana, are probably popping champagne in the living room right now. They are discussing which walls to knock down and how much the vintage mid-century furniture will fetch at auction. They are relieved that the burden is gone. They are relieved that I am gone. They do not know about the phone call I just received. They do not know about the red accordion folder sitting on the passenger seat next to me. I need to write this down. I need to document everything before the anger makes me lose my focus. This is not a sob story. This is a record of facts. Part 1. The Invisible Son. The funeral was 2 days ago. It was a tasteful affair, mostly because Alana organized it. Alana is good at organizing things that other people pay for. She selected the lilies. She selected the mahogany casket. She selected the hymns. She stood at the pulpit in her black designer dress and wept gracefully about Mom's gentle spirit and enduring wisdom. I sat in the front row, wearing a suit that was too loose because I had lost 30 pounds in the last year from stress and missed meals. I didn't cry. I was too tired to cry. I was operating on a level of exhaustion that feels less like sleepiness and more like being underwater. When Alana finished her eulogy, Derek went up. Derek is the oldest. He is a vice president of sales for a software company in Chicago. He flew in for the funeral, his first visit in 18 months. He talked about Mom's Sunday roasts. He talked about how she taught him to ride a bike. He told a funny story about a family vacation to the Grand Canyon in 1998. Everyone laughed. Everyone wiped their eyes. I didn't speak. They didn't ask me to. I wasn't on the program. After the service, during the reception at the parish hall, people came up to Derek and Alana. They shook hands. They offered condolences. They said things like, "Your mother was a saint, and it's so hard to lose a matriarch." Occasionally, someone would look at me. They would give a tight, pitying smile. A few of Mom's church friends, the ones who actually visited the house in the last few years, came over. Mrs. Gable squeezed my hand. "You did a good job, Liam," she whispered. "You were there." "I was there," I repeated. Derek walked over, holding a plastic cup of white wine. He looked at me with a mix of affection and condescension he has perfected over 3 decades. "You holding up, buddy?" he asked. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. It felt heavy. "I'm fine," I said. "Listen," Derek said, lowering his voice. "We need to have a meeting tomorrow. About the house. The estate. Alana and I were talking, and we think it's best to get everything settled quickly so we can all move on. You need to start your life, Liam. You've been paused for a long time." Paused. That was his word for it. He made it sound like I had been on a vacation. He made it sound like the last 6 years were a gap year I took to find myself, rather than a prison sentence of bodily fluids and dementia-induced screaming matches. "Sure," I said. "Tomorrow." "Great," Derek said. 10 a.m. At the house. The lawyer is coming over. He walked away to charm a cousin we hadn't seen in a decade. I looked at the egg salad sandwiches and realized I hated them all. I hated my family. I hated the grief tourists. I hated the silence that was waiting for me back at the house. Part 2, The Descent. To understand why the will reading destroyed me, you have to understand what the last 6 years actually looked like. I was 26 when Dad died. Mom was already showing signs of Parkinson's, but she was manageable. I was working as a junior graphic designer at a firm in the city. I had a girlfriend. I had an apartment. I had a trajectory. Then Mom fell. She broke her hip. The hospital delirium set in, and the Parkinson's accelerated. The doctors said she couldn't live alone. Derek was already in Chicago, climbing the corporate ladder. Alana was in Atlanta, married to a real estate developer, raising 2 kids and posting perfectly curated photos of her organic garden on Instagram. We had a family conference call. "I obviously can't move back," Derek said. "My career is at a critical juncture." "I have the twins," Alana said. "Our house isn't baby-proofed for a senior with mobility issues, and honestly, the schools here are why we moved. We can't uproot." Silence on the line. They were waiting for me. I was the single one. The one with the artsy job. The one whose time was deemed less valuable. I can do it for a while, I said. Until she recovers. She never recovered. I moved back into my childhood bedroom. I set up a freelance workstation in the corner. I thought I could balance it. I was naive. Caregiving is not a job. It is a consumption. Year 1 was physical therapy and medication management. It was driving to appointments and cooking meals. I lost the girlfriend 3 months in. She said she didn't want to date a guy who had a curfew because his mom couldn't be left alone at night. Year 2 was the beginning of the incontinence. I learned how to change adult diapers. I learned how to clean sheets at 3 a.m. without waking up fully. I stopped freelancing because I kept missing deadlines. I burned through my savings. I asked Derek and Alana for money. We can send a few $100 a month for groceries, Derek said. But Liam, you're living there rent-free. That's a huge benefit. You shouldn't need that much cash. Rent-free. Living in a house where the heating system was breaking, where I slept with one ear open, listening for the sound of a fall. Year 3 and 4 were the hallucinations. Mom started seeing people who weren't there. She accused me of stealing her jewelry. She accused me of poisoning her food. She would scream for hours that I was a stranger holding her hostage. I recorded one of her episodes and sent it to the group chat. Alana, oh my God, that's heartbreaking. Poor Mom. Have you tried playing soothing music? Derek, stay strong, Liam. You're doing the Lord's work. They didn't visit. Christmas was a FaceTime call. They sent gifts, expensive sweaters Mom couldn't button, books she couldn't read. I got gift cards to Amazon. Year 5 was the hospice phase. The decline was steep. She was bedbound. I had to turn her every 2 hours to prevent bed sores. I was getting maybe 4 hours of sleep a night. I was isolated. I had no friends left. My world had shrunk to the 4 walls of that house and the smell of antiseptic and decay. But there were moments of clarity. About 6 months ago, late at night, I was sitting by her bed reading. She woke up and looked at me. Her eyes were clear. The fog had lifted for a minute. Liam, she rasped. I'm here, Mom. She reached out a hand. Her fingers were twisted and thin. I took it. You're still here, she said. It was a statement, not a question. I'm still here. The others. They're busy, Mom. They love you, though. She looked at the ceiling. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she squeezed my hand with surprising strength. I see, she said. I see everything. Then she drifted back into sleep. I thought it was just a fleeting moment. I didn't know she was making plans. Part 3, the reading. We gathered in the living room. The house smelled like bleach and old lavender, the scent I could never quite scrub out. Mr. Henderson, Mom's lawyer, sat at the head of the dining table. He was a dry, ancient man who had handled Dad's estate. He looked uncomfortable. Derek sat to his right, wearing a polo shirt and khakis, looking like he was ready for a golf game immediately after. Alana was on the left, scrolling through her phone, probably checking engagement on her eulogy post. I sat at the far end. Thank you for coming, Mr. Henderson said. He opened a leather binder. I will get straight to the point. I am reading the last will and testament of Margaret and Miller, dated 6 months ago. Derek perked up. 6 months ago? I thought her will was from 2015. She updated it, Mr. Henderson said. He glanced at me. She was quite specific about her wishes. Alana put her phone down. Okay, go ahead. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. To my son, Derek Miller, and my daughter, Alana Vance, I leave the family home located at 442 Oak Street, along with all physical contents, furniture, and personal effects therein, to be divided equally between them. Derek slapped the table. Excellent. That makes things easy. Alana nodded. We can list it next month. The market is hot right now. I felt a cold stone settle in my stomach. The house. The house was everything. It was my only shelter. And to my son, Liam Miller, Mr. Henderson continued. My heart hammered against my ribs. I leave the contents of the blue shoebox in the top shelf of my bedroom closet. Silence. Mr. Henderson closed the binder. That's it. Derek asked. That is the entirety of the distribution of assets, Mr. Henderson said. I stared at the lawyer. Wait. What about the savings? The life insurance? Dad's pension fund? The residuary estate, Mr. Henderson said carefully, was liquidated and distributed prior to death, or is addressed in separate instruments not subject to this will. As far as this document is concerned, the house goes to Derek and Alana. The box goes to Liam. What's in the box? Alana asked. She sounded suspicious, like I had just been handed diamonds. Sentimental items, Mr. Henderson said. Photographs. Trinkets. I stood up. My legs were shaking. She left me a box? I gave up 6 years of my life. I have no job. I have nowhere to go. She left me a box. Derek stood up too. He put on his manager handling a difficult employee face. Liam, calm down. Mom obviously felt that you had capitalized on her hospitality for a long time. You've been living here rent-free. You haven't worked in years. She probably wanted to give you a push. To get you back out there. A push. I shouted. I was wiping her ass, Derek. I was the one feeding her. You visited twice in 5 years. You sent a fruit basket. We supported you financially, Alana interjected, her voice sharp. We sent checks. You sent $300 a month. I yelled. That didn't even cover the electricity. It's not our fault you couldn't manage your finances, Derek said coldly. Look, the will is clear. The house is ours. We are going to sell it. You need to vacate. Vacate. I looked around the room. This is my home. Not anymore, Derek said. We need to prep it for staging. We can't have you squatting here. We'll give you, let's be generous, 3 days. Pack your stuff. Find a place. You can't kick me out in 3 days. Actually, Derek said, since you don't have a lease and you aren't an owner, we can ask you to leave. Don't make us get the sheriff involved, Liam. It would be embarrassing for you. I looked at them. Really looked at them. They weren't grieving. They were counting chips. They saw me as an obstacle to their payout. I looked at Mr. Henderson. He was staring at his hands. He knew this was wrong. But he said nothing. Fine, I said. My voice broke, but I forced it steady. Fine. I walked upstairs. I went to Mom's closet. I found the blue shoebox. I didn't open it. I just threw it in a duffel bag with my clothes. Part 4, the eviction. The next 3 days were a blur of rage and boxes. Derek and Alana stayed at a hotel, but they came by every morning to supervise the packing. They walked through the rooms, putting sticky notes on furniture they wanted to keep and furniture they wanted to trash. They tagged Mom's favorite armchair, the one I had slept in next to her bed for 3 weeks when she had pneumonia, with a neon green sticker that said trash. It smells like urine, Alana said, wrinkling her nose. That's because she died in it, I said. Alana shuddered. God, Liam. You don't have to be so morbid. I packed my computer. I packed my meager wardrobe. I packed the few books I had bought. I didn't steal anything. I wanted to. I wanted to smash the porcelain figurines Alana was cooing over. I wanted to rip the copper wiring out of the walls. But I didn't. I just packed. On the 3rd day, Derek met me at the door. Keys, he said. I handed them over. Good luck, Liam, he said. He didn't sound like he meant it. Maybe look into trade school. Or Uber. I walked to my car. I didn't look back. I drove to the diner where I am sitting now. I ordered coffee. I sat there for 4 hours, staring at the steam, trying to figure out how to survive. Then my phone rang. It was Mr. Henderson. Liam, he said. His voice was different. Less formal. Urgent. Are you away from the house? Yes, I said. I'm gone. Good. Can you meet me at my office? Now. Why? Is there another box of trash you forgot to give me? No, he said. The will reading, that was theater, Liam. Your mother gave me strict instructions. I could not speak until you were physically out of the house and the keys were handed over to your siblings. I needed to confirm that they would kick you out. What do you mean? She wanted to be sure, Mr. Henderson said. She wanted to give them a chance to do the right thing. If they had said, "Liam, stay, we'll share the house," the instructions would have been different. But she knew they wouldn't. She knew exactly who they were. I don't understand. Come to my office. Part 5, The Letter. I drove to his office. It was a small brick building downtown. Mr. Henderson met me at the door and locked it behind me. He led me to his conference room. On the table was a thick red accordion folder and a white envelope with my name on it in Mom's shaky handwriting. "Read the letter first," Mr. Henderson said. I sat down. I opened the envelope. "My dearest Liam, if you are reading this, 2 things have happened. First, I am gone. Second, your brother and sister have thrown you out of the house. I am sorry I had to put you through that. I am sorry I had to leave you in the dark. But I needed to protect you, and to do that, I had to play a game. A game I have been playing for a long time. I have been sick, Liam, but I was not blind. I saw you. I saw you give up your life. I saw you clean me. I saw you cook for me. I saw you sitting in the chair next to my bed when you thought I was asleep, crying because you were so lonely. And I saw them. Or rather, I didn't see them. I saw Derek's new car on Facebook. I saw Alana's vacations. I heard their excuses. I heard them tell you there was no money to help with my care. I heard them talk about me like I was a burden that just wouldn't hurry up and die. They think I am stupid. They think dementia took everything. It took a lot, but it didn't take my judge of character. I knew that if I left you the house and the will, they would fight you. They have money for lawyers. You don't. They would drag you through court for years. They would drain the estate and leave you with nothing. They would claim I was incompetent when I signed the will. They would destroy you. So, I gave them what they wanted. I gave them the house. But here is the truth, Liam. The house is a trap. 3 years ago, when I was still lucid enough to sign legal documents, I met with Mr. Henderson. I took out a reverse mortgage on the house. The maximum amount. I also took out a massive home equity line of credit. I drained the equity. All of it. The house belongs to the bank. Derek and Alana just inherited a property that is underwater by about $450,000. They are legally responsible for the debts attached to the estate if they accept the asset. By the time they realize this, the foreclosure notices will already be on the way. But where did that money go? That is what is in the red folder. I created an irrevocable trust in your name, the Liam Miller Trust. I funded it with the equity from the house, my life insurance policies, which I changed 3 years ago, and Dad's remaining pension payout. It has been sitting in a high-yield investment account. The trust is shielded. It is not part of the probate estate. They cannot touch it. They cannot sue for it. It is yours. It has been yours for years. As of this morning, the balance is $1,240,000. You are free, Liam. You have the means to go back to school, to buy your own home, to start the life you paused for me. Do not feel guilty. They made their choice. They chose the house because they thought it was the prize. They chose greed. You chose love. I love you, my son. Go live. Mom. Part 6, The Aftermath. I put the letter down. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely breathe. Is this real? I asked. Mr. Henderson smiled. A genuine, shark-like smile. It is very real. The funds are already available. Here is the debit card for the account. I can wire the bulk to your personal bank whenever you open a new one. I sat there. I thought about the $300 in my pocket. I thought about the egg salad sandwiches. I thought about the trash sticker on Mom's chair. What happens to them? I asked. Well, Mr. Henderson said, leaning back. They have taken possession of the property. They have likely already started contacting realtors. In about 2 weeks, they will receive a notification from the lender regarding the outstanding balance of the reverse mortgage. Since the loan comes due upon the death of the borrower, they will have to pay the full $450,000 immediately to keep the house. And if they can't? The bank forecloses. They get nothing. Actually, less than nothing, because they will have already spent money on utilities, staging, and legal fees to transfer the deed. And since the will explicitly grants them the house and its encumbrances, They are stuck with the mess. Did they know? No. Your mother was very careful. She had all bank statements sent to my office. She played the part of the confused old woman perfectly. I started to laugh. It was a wet, choking sound. I laughed until I was crying. Mom. My quiet, sick, fading mom. She had nuked them from the grave. I walked out of Mr. Henderson's office an hour later. I went to the bank. I deposited a check for startup cash. I booked a room at the nicest hotel in the city. I took a shower that lasted 45 minutes. I ordered room service. I slept for 12 hours. When I woke up, I had 14 missed calls from Derek. I didn't answer. I listened to the voicemail. Derek, Liam, call me. Now. There's something wrong with the title on the house. The lawyer isn't answering. What did you know about a mortgage? Mom paid that off in 1990. Call me. I deleted the message. I am not going to call him. Not yet. I'm going to spend a week in this hotel. Then I'm going to buy a small house, maybe near the ocean. I'm going to get a dog. I'm going to paint again. I checked my email one last time. There was an email from Alana. Subject: Urgent, house issues. Liam, you need to tell us what's going on. The bank says we owe $500,000. This has to be fraud. Did you do this? We are going to sue you if you had anything to do with this. I hit reply. I wrote 5 words. Check the blue shoebox. Inside the box, underneath the old photos and the trinkets, is a copy of the reverse mortgage paperwork. And a note from Mom that simply says, I told you I saw everything. I hit send. I turned off my phone. I'm going to get breakfast now. And I'm going to order whatever I want. Update: 6 months later. I didn't plan on updating this, but the messages I've received asking for closure have been overwhelming. I am currently writing this from the deck of a small A-frame cabin in Vermont. It's quiet here. The air smells like pine instead of bleach. Here is what happened after I sent the email. The fallout was nuclear. Derek and Alana tried to sue. Of course they did. They hired a high-powered firm to challenge the validity of the trust. They claimed undue influence. They claimed I manipulated Mom while she was mentally incompetent. But Mr. Henderson was ready. He produced video recordings. Apparently, every time Mom signed a document regarding the trust or the reverse mortgage, Mr. Henderson recorded the session. In the videos, Mom is sitting up, lucid and sharp. In one video, Mr. Henderson asks, Margaret, do you understand that this action will effectively reduce the value of the estate left to Derek and Alana to zero? Mom looks right at the camera. Her eyes are like steel. I understand perfectly, she says. They have their inheritance. They have their indifference. Liam has my care. This is payment for services rendered and love given. The judge threw their case out in under a month. Because of the legal fees they incurred trying to fight me, and the money they sank into the house before the bank took it, Derek and Alana took a significant financial hit. The house was foreclosed on. It was sold at auction last month. Strangers live there now. I drove by once, just to look. They painted the front door yellow. Mom would have hated it. I didn't care. Derek lost his job. Apparently, the stress of the lawsuit and the financial embarrassment affected his performance. Or maybe he was just always an asshole and his company finally noticed. He sent me a long rambling letter last week asking for a loan to help him get back on his feet. He appealed to family loyalty. I burned the letter in the fireplace. Alana is still posting on Instagram, but the posts are different. Less perfect life, more vague quotes about betrayal and karma. She blocked me, but I have a burner account. I watch sometimes. It's a bad habit, I know. I'm working on it. I am in therapy. It turns out 6 years of trauma doesn't just vanish because you have money. I still wake up at 3 a.m. listening for the sound of someone falling. I still panic when I hear a cough. But it's getting better. I started painting again. I painted a portrait of Mom. Not the sick version. The version from the video. The woman with the steel eyes who loved me enough to burn the world down to save me. I hung it over the fireplace. Yesterday, I went to the local shelter. I adopted a dog. He's a mutt, scruffy and older. Nobody wanted him because he has a limp and he requires daily medication. The shelter worker apologized. He's a lot of work, she said. He needs special care. I scratched him behind the ears. He leaned into my hand and sighed. It's okay, I said. I'm good at that. I named him Shadow. We're doing just fine. They called me the ghost, until I haunted them into prison. I am sitting in a deposition room that smells faintly of stale coffee and floor wax. Across the table, 3 lawyers in suits that cost more than my car are staring at me like I am a bomb waiting to go off. To my right, a court reporter is ready to type. Through the glass partition, I can see them. Trent, the golden boy of sales. Brenda, the operations queen. And Rick, the warehouse manager who used to flick paper clips at the back of my head during staff meetings. They aren't laughing now. They are handcuffed to a bench, looking at me with a mixture of pure hatred and genuine confusion. They still don't understand how it happened. They don't understand how the guy they spent 3 years treating like office furniture, the guy they mocked for being too quiet, managed to dismantle their entire operation piece by piece. They forgot the golden rule of criminal conspiracy: never invisibilize the person who handles the data. My name is Arthur Penhaligon, and for 3 years, I was an inventory control specialist at Viridian Logistics. That is a fancy title for a guy who stares at spreadsheets until his eyes bleed. Viridian is a massive third-party logistics firm. We handle shipping for everything from high-end consumer electronics to medical devices. My job was boring. It was repetitive. And I was good at it. I have always been a quiet person. I don't do small talk. I don't care about your weekend, I don't watch the football game, and I don't drink. In the corporate world, this makes you a pariah. If you aren't networking, you are nothing. The bullying started on my 2nd week. It wasn't the shove-in-a-locker type of bullying you see in high school movies. It was corporate psychological warfare. It was subtle, plausible deniability stuff. It started with Trent. Trent was the regional sales director. He was loud, charismatic, and entirely incompetent at anything that didn't involve buying steak dinners for clients. He walked past my desk one Tuesday while I was reconciling the Q3 shipping manifests. "Hey Ghost," Trent said. He didn't stop walking. He just tossed a crumpled-up fast food wrapper onto my desk. "Missed the trash can. You got that, right?" I looked at the wrapper. I looked at him. I didn't say anything. I just threw it away. That was my mistake. I validated the dynamic. From that day on, I wasn't Arthur. I was the ghost or the mute, or simply hey you. Brenda was worse. Brenda was the director of operations. She was the type of person who used reply all to correct your grammar. She viewed my silence as insubordination. If I didn't greet her with a 10-minute conversation about her cats every morning, she assumed I was plotting against her. She moved my desk 3 times in 1 year. First, I was by the window. Then, I was by the bathroom. Finally, she put me in a corner behind the server rack, where the hum of the cooling fans was so loud you couldn't hear a phone ring. "It's better for you, Arthur," she told me, smiling that tight, fake smile. "You like it quiet, don't you? Now you can be alone with your little spreadsheets." Then there was Rick. Rick ran the warehouse floor. Rick was a hulking guy who peaked in high school football and never got over it. He controlled the physical inventory. He resented anyone from upstairs coming down to his domain. Since I was the inventory control specialist, I had to go downstairs to do spot checks. Every time I entered the warehouse, Rick would get on the PA system. "Alert. Alert. The ghost is on the floor. Try not to scare him, boys, he might faint." The warehouse workers would laugh. I would keep my head down, count the pallets, check the SKUs, and leave. I never fought back. I never reported them to HR. Why would I? The HR director was Trent's cousin. I needed this job. My mother was in assisted living, and the bills were astronomical. So I took it. I became exactly what they said I was. I became invisible. I stopped speaking in meetings entirely unless asked a direct question. I ate lunch in my car. I came in early and left late just to avoid interacting with them. But here is the thing about being the quiet one. When you are quiet, people stop noticing you are there. And when people stop noticing you are there, they stop watching what they say around you. They stop hiding their screens. They stop lowering their voices. The first thread unraveled on a rainy Thursday in November. I was working late, around 7 p.m. The office was empty, or so I thought. I was in my exile corner behind the server racks, running a reconciliation report on a shipment of high-end graphics cards. These were RTX 4090s, worth about $2,000 a pop. We had received a shipment of 5,000 units meant for a distribution center in Nevada. My numbers were off. The system showed we had received 5,000. The shipping manifest to Nevada showed we had shipped 5,000. But the weight logs didn't match. Every pallet that leaves our warehouse goes over a massive industrial scale. The weight is automatically logged into the system to calculate freight costs. It is a fail-safe. You can fake a packing slip, but you can't fake the physics of mass. According to the scale data, the truck that left for Nevada was lighter than it should have been. Specifically, it was light by exactly the weight of 2 pallets. That is roughly 200 cards. $400,000 in inventory. I sat there, blinking at the screen. My first thought was a calibration error. Scales drift. It happens. I pulled up the calibration logs. Rick had signed off on the scale calibration that very morning. The scale was accurate. I checked the inventory adjustments. Sometimes items get damaged and are written off. There were no write-offs. I checked the security logs. The truck had been loaded at 4:30 p.m. The loader ID belonged to a guy named Stavo, one of Rick's cronies. I was about to send an email to Brenda, flagging the discrepancy, when I heard voices. They were coming from Trent's office. Trent's office was on the other side of the floor, but the ventilation ducts in this cheap building carried sound like a tin can telephone. Plus, my corner behind the servers was directly under the main vent intake. Getting risky, Trent. The audit is in January. That was Brenda's voice. She sounded sharp, anxious. Relax, B, Trent said. His voice was smooth, arrogant. The ghost handles the numbers. He's a drone. He sees a number, he types a number. He doesn't think. He doesn't analyze. If the manifest says 5,000, he enters 5,000. He's not a robot, Brenda snapped. He's weird, but he's not stupid. He is scared, Rick's voice joined in. I felt a cold spike in my chest. Rick shouldn't be upstairs. I rattled his cage yesterday. Knocked a stack of boxes over right next to him. Guy nearly jumped out of his skin. He won't look too close. And if he does, who's gonna listen to him? He's the office creep. I sat perfectly still. My breathing shallow. They were talking about me. And they were talking about the audit. Just make sure the cycle counts are adjusted by Friday, Trent said. I have a buyer in Chicago who wants the next batch of processors. Cash only. No paper trail. I can't just delete the inventory, Brenda hissed. I have to mark it as damaged in transit, or lost to spoilage. I need Rick to generate the damage reports. Done, Rick said. I'll smash a couple of empty boxes, take some photos. Easy. And the money? Brenda asked. Crypto wallet, same as last time, Trent said. Clean, untraceable. We split it 3 ways. Once we hit 2 million each, we walk. We leave this dump and let the ghost take the fall for the incompetence. I slowly moved my hand away from my keyboard. I didn't send the email. They weren't just bullying me. They were using me as their shield. They were stealing millions of dollars in hardware, and they were relying on my passive, quiet nature to let it slide. They were banking on the fact that I was too intimidated to question discrepancies, or too isolated to have anyone listen if I did. Rage is a funny thing. Usually, it makes you hot. It makes you want to yell. But this rage was cold. It felt like liquid nitrogen pouring into my veins. They thought I was a drone? They thought I was an NPC in their game? I wasn't going to report them. Not yet. Reporting them now would be a mistake. It would be my word against the 3 most powerful people in the branch. Trent would charm the CEO. Brenda would bury me in paperwork. Rick would probably catch me in the parking lot and break my legs. No. I needed evidence. I needed indisputable, overwhelming proof. I needed to catch them in the act. The next morning, I arrived at work exactly on time. I wore my usual beige cardigan. I made my usual tea. I walked past Trent's office. Morning sunshine. Trent yelled out, leaning back in his chair. Try not to talk everyone's ear off today. I stopped. I turned to him. I gave a small, nervous smile and nodded. Okay, I whispered. He laughed. God, he's such a weirdo, I heard him say as I walked away. I sat at my desk behind the servers and opened a new spreadsheet. I named it Project Poltergeist. Step 1 was mapping the network. I had admin access to the Inventory Management System, IMS, because of my job. But I didn't have access to the Salesforce data, Trent, or the warehouse security feeds, Rick. However, people who underestimate you also underestimate your intelligence. Rick was the type of guy who wrote his passwords on a sticky note under his keyboard. I knew this because I had seen him lift the keyboard to shake out crumbs during a lunch break. I waited until lunch. The triad usually went out together to a gastropub down the street. It was a Friday, so they would be gone for at least 90 minutes. The office emptied out. I walked down to the warehouse floor. It was a skeleton crew during lunch. I put on a high-vis vest and grabbed a clipboard. I looked like I belonged. I walked straight into Rick's glass-walled office overlooking the floor. I lifted his keyboard. There it was. A yellow sticky note. Rick Rolls 88. Pathetic. I didn't log in there. That would leave a physical log. I memorized it and went back upstairs. I used a VPN on my personal laptop, which I had tethered to my phone's hotspot to avoid the company network logs, and accessed the security camera portal using Rick's credentials. I was in. I had eyes on the warehouse. I set up a script to record the feeds from the loading docks and the secure storage cage where the high-value items were kept. Next was Brenda. Brenda was smarter. No sticky notes. But Brenda was lazy. She used the same password for everything. I knew her email password because she had once asked me to fix her Outlook while she typed it in right in front of me. Mittens 123. I tried it on the financial database. Access granted. I began to dig. I went back 3 years. I cross-referenced shipping manifests with weight logs, damage reports, and sales orders. It was tedious work. It took me 3 weeks of staying late, analyzing thousands of rows of data. The pattern was brilliant in its simplicity. The overorder, Trent would order 10% more stock than a client needed. The skim, Rick would pull that 10% aside in the warehouse. The adjustment, Brenda would go into the system and mark that 10% as pre-shipment damage or vendor error return pending. The fence, Trent would sell the skimmed goods to a black market contact. The cleanup, Rick would destroy the packaging or ship the empty boxes back to the vendor as defective returns, claiming the items were missing upon arrival. They had stolen over $4 million in 3 years. But data is just numbers. I needed them saying it. I needed the smoking gun. 2 weeks later, the opportunity arrived. The company holiday party. Mandatory attendance. I hated these things. Loud music, cheap booze, and forced socialization. The triad held court at the bar, laughing, buying shots. I stood in the corner with a seltzer water, watching. I knew they would hold a strategy meeting soon. A massive shipment of medical imaging sensors was arriving on Monday. Value, $1.2 million. It was their biggest score yet. I saw Trent check his watch. He whispered something to Brenda. She nodded. They tapped Rick. The three of them began to move toward the conference rooms in the back hallway, away from the party. I had prepared for this. Earlier that day, I had gone into Conference Room B, their favorite spot because it had no windows, and taped a high-fidelity voice recorder under the mahogany table, secured with black gaffer tape so it blended in with the dark wood. I couldn't follow them. It would look suspicious. I had to trust the tech. I watched them slip into the hallway. 10 minutes passed. 20. They emerged, looking flushed and excited. Trent slapped Rick on the back. They were celebrating early. I waited until the party wound down. I pretended to be cleaning up trash, a subservient act they would expect from me. I made my way to the conference room, retrieved the recorder, and slipped it into my sock. I drove home. My hands were shaking. I sat at my kitchen table and put on my headphones. The audio was crisp. Click. Trent, this is it. The retirement fund. Brenda, I'm nervous about the serial numbers. Medical devices are tracked more strictly than GPUs. Rick, don't worry about it. I swapped the labels. The sensors going to the hospital are the real deal. The ones we're stealing are the duplicates I created in the system. By the time they realize the inventory count is off, the sensors will be in Mexico. Trent, and the ghost? He's doing the year-end reconciliation next week. Rick, laughter. I put a dead rat in his desk drawer today. He screamed like a little girl. He's a mess. He's not looking at numbers, he's looking for a safe space. If he asks questions, I'll tell him it's a glitch in the legacy system. He's too chicken to push back. Brenda, God, I hate him. The way he just stares. It's creepy. Maybe we should just fire him after this? Frame him for negligence. Trent, good idea. Plant some of the cash in his car. Make it look like he was paid off to look the other way. 2 birds, 1 stone. I stopped the recording. They weren't just going to steal. They were going to frame me. They were going to destroy my life to cover their exit. The cold rage returned. But this time, it was mixed with a terrifying clarity. I couldn't just go to the CEO. The CEO was in the Maldives for the holidays. If I went to the police now, the triad might destroy the evidence before a warrant could be issued. I needed to catch them in the physical act of theft. The shipment was coming in Monday. They planned to move it Monday night. I spent the weekend prepping. I bought 3 GoPro cameras, huge battery banks, and high-strength magnets. I bought a dark hoodie and soft-soled boots. Monday came. The atmosphere in the office was electric. Trent was whistling. Brenda was actually nice to me, which was terrifying. Hey Arthur, she said, dropping a file on my desk. I need you to prioritize the office supply audit today. Don't worry about the inbound doc logs. Rick has that covered. Okay, I said, staring at my shoes. Thank you, Brenda. Good boy, she said. I felt sick. At 5 p.m., I packed up my bag. I'm heading out, I mumbled to the empty air. See ya, spook. Trent yelled from his office. I walked to the elevator. I went down to the lobby. I walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove away. But I didn't go home. I drove 2 blocks over to a Walmart parking lot. I waited until 7 p.m. Then I walked back. The warehouse had a side door near the compactor that didn't lock properly. Rick knew about it. He kept it that way so he could sneak out for smoke breaks without swiping his badge. I slipped inside. The warehouse was dim, lit only by the emergency security lights. The hum of the refrigeration units was deafening. I moved through the shadows, navigating by memory. I climbed up the racking of aisle 4, positioning myself 20 feet in the air, looking down at the loading dock. I clamped the GoPros to the metal racking, aimed at the loading bay doors. I hit record. I waited. At 8:15 p.m., the bay door rolled up. A white unmarked box truck backed in. Rick jumped off the dock and greeted the driver. It wasn't one of our usual drivers. Trent walked out onto the floor. He was wearing jeans and a black polo. He looked out of place among the pallets. Brenda followed him, holding a tablet. Let's move, Trent said. We have a 30-minute window before the night security patrol loops back. Rick operated the forklift. He drove to the secure cage. He bypassed the keypad. He had propped the door open earlier. He drove in and came out with a pallet wrapped in black plastic. The medical sensors. He loaded the pallet onto the white truck. That's the last of it, Rick said. Check the manifest, Brenda said. Does the system show the location as quarantine? Yeah, Rick said. I moved the digital location to the quarantine cage. If anyone looks, the product is just on hold for quality control. By the time they check the cage physically, we're gone. Beautiful, Trent said. He handed the driver a thick envelope. Get this to the drop point. Don't stop for gas. The driver nodded and climbed into the cab. This was it. The crime was complete. I had the video. I had the audio. I had the data logs. I was about to climb down when my phone buzzed. I froze. I had put it on silent. I was sure of it, but I had forgotten to turn off the vibration. The buzzing sound against the metal racking sounded like a jackhammer in the silence. Rick stopped. What was that? Silence. I heard something, Rick said. He pulled a flashlight from his belt. The beam cut through the darkness, sweeping the aisles. It's probably just a rat, Trent said nervously. Let's go. No, Rick said. It came from aisle 4. He started walking toward my location. I pressed myself flat against the top of the pallet I was lying on. It was a pallet of toilet paper. Soft, thankfully. But I was 20 feet up. There was nowhere to go. Rick stopped at the bottom of the rack. He shone the light up. The beam missed me by inches. Come out, wherever you are. Rick taunted. He picked up a crowbar from a workbench. Clang. He hit the metal racking. The vibration shook my bones. Rick, stop screwing around. Brenda hissed. We need to leave. Someone is here, Rick said. He started to climb the ladder at the end of the rack. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. If he found me, with 3 cameras and a phone full of evidence, he would kill me. I wasn't being dramatic. These people were stealing millions. They weren't going to just let me walk away. I looked around. To my left, across a 3-foot gap, was the high bay shelving for overflow storage. It was dark. Rick was climbing. I could hear his heavy boots clanging on the rungs. I took a breath. I am not athletic. I am the guy who got winded walking up 2 flights of stairs. But fear is a hell of a motivator. I crawled to the edge of the pallet. I grabbed my bag with the laptop. I left the cameras running. I leaped. I hit the other rack hard. My shin slammed into a metal crossbar. Pain exploded up my leg, blinding white hot. I bit my tongue to keep from screaming. I scrambled onto the shelf, rolling behind a wall of boxes containing printer toner. Rick reached the top of aisle 4. Nothing here, he grunted. I heard him kick a box. Wait. What's this? My heart stopped. The cameras. What is it? Trent called out. GoPros, Rick yelled. 3 of them. Recording. What? Brenda shrieked. Who put them there? The ghost, Rick growled. It has to be. Who else creeps around here? Find him. Trent screamed. Find him and break his neck. Rick slid down the ladder. Lock the exits, he shouted to Trent. He's trapped in here. I was trapped. My leg was throbbing. I could feel blood trickling down my shin. I was on top of a rack in a locked warehouse with 3 people hunting me. I pulled out my phone. 2% battery. The tethering and the video upload had drained it. I had 1 call. I didn't call the police. The response time in this industrial district was 20 minutes. Rick would find me in 5. I called Mr. Henderson, the VP of Loss Prevention. He worked out of the corporate HQ in Denver, but I knew he was in town for the audit prep. I had seen his name on the visitor log earlier. Hello. His voice was groggy. It was 9 p.m. Mr. Henderson, I whispered. This is Arthur Penhaligon. Inventory control. I am in the warehouse. Rick, Trent, and Brenda are stealing the medical shipment. They have locked the doors. They are hunting me. Arthur? Slow down. What? I have video evidence. I have logs. They are loading the truck right now. Please. Send help. They are going to hurt me. Where are you? Top of aisle 5. Hiding. Stay put. I'm calling PD. I'm 10 minutes away. 10 minutes. I know you're in here, Arthur. Rick's voice echoed. I can smell your cheap cologne. He was smashing boxes now, systematically moving down the aisles. I needed a distraction. I looked at the boxes around me. Toner cartridges. Heavy. I looked at the fire suppression system running along the ceiling. A sprinkler head was directly above the next rack over. If I could set off the sprinklers, the chaos might buy me time. But I had no lighter. No heat source. Then I remembered the forklift. Rick had left it idling near the loading dock. I couldn't reach the forklift. But I could reach the racking controls. This warehouse used a semi-automated picking system. There was a control panel at the end of the aisle. If I could trigger a reslot command, the automated crane would move down the aisle, scanning for pallets. I crawled to the end of the rack. The pain in my leg was nausea-inducing. I reached the panel. I punched in the override code. Rick Rolls 88. I initiated a full aisle reorganization for aisle 4, where Rick was standing. The massive robotic crane on the ceiling whirred to life. It sounded like a jet engine starting up. What the hell? Rick yelled. The crane arm descended, swinging a heavy steel claw designed to lift 2 tons. It swept down aisle 4. Rick screamed and dove out of the way as the claw smashed into the racking he had just been standing on. It didn't hit him, but it knocked over a pallet of bowling balls. Yes, we shipped bowling balls. Hundreds of bowling balls cascaded onto the concrete floor. The noise was apocalyptic. Thunderous crashing, cracking plastic, and the terrified shouts of the triad. The machine's gone crazy. Brenda screamed. It's him. Rick roared. He's hacking the system. I used the noise to move. I slid down the emergency ladder on the far side of the warehouse, dropping into the shadows behind the compactor. I limped toward the loading dock. The white truck was still there. The driver was gone, probably spooked by the noise. I saw the bay door open. The night air hit my face. Freedom. Going somewhere, freak? I turned. Trent was standing there. He was holding a box cutter. He wasn't smiling anymore. He looked desperate. Sweaty. Dangerous. Give me the phone, he said. Give me the phone and I let you walk. I sent it, I lied. It's already in the cloud. You're lying, he stepped closer. You're a nobody. You don't have the guts. I have the data, Trent, I said. My voice was steady. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't whispering. I have everything. The crypto wallet. The fake returns. The dates. The times. Trent lunged. He slashed the box cutter at my face. I stumbled back, tripping over a loose piece of pallet. I fell hard. Trent towered over me, raising the blade. You should have stayed quiet, he hissed. Sirens. Blue and red lights flooded the loading bay, blinding us. Police. Drop the weapon. Trent froze. He looked at the lights, then at me, then at the knife. Drop it now. Trent dropped the knife. He raised his hands. He started to cry. Actually cry. Mr. Henderson ran into the warehouse, flanked by 4 police officers. Arthur, he yelled. I lay on the concrete, clutching my bleeding leg. I looked up at Trent, who was being slammed against the wall by a cop. I am quiet, I said to no one in particular. But I am listening. The aftermath. The investigation took 6 months. My evidence was bulletproof. The video from the GoPros, which the police recovered, showed the theft clearly. My Project Poltergeist spreadsheet linked every single stolen item to a bank deposit in Trent's offshore accounts. They found $4.2 million in stolen assets. Trent, Brenda, and Rick were charged with grand larceny, conspiracy, wire fraud, and corporate espionage. Rick rolled on them immediately. He took a plea deal for 5 years. He admitted everything, including the planned framing of me. Trent and Brenda fought it. They tried to claim I had manipulated the data to frame them. That was their defense in court today. That brings us back to the deposition. The opposing lawyer, a slick guy representing Trent, leaned forward. Mr. Penhaligon, he sneered. You claim you were bullied. Isn't it true that you hold a grudge against my client? Isn't it true that you orchestrated this entire scenario to get revenge because they didn't invite you to happy hour? I looked at the lawyer. I looked at Trent, who was staring at the table, pale and gaunt. I leaned into the microphone. I didn't do this for revenge, I said calmly. I did it because the numbers didn't balance. And I hate it when the numbers don't balance. The lawyer paused. He didn't know what to do with that. Also, I added, looking directly at Trent. He owes me for the stapler. Epilogue. I didn't lose my job. In fact, Viridian Logistics promoted me. I am now the regional director of loss prevention. I have a nice office with a door that closes. I fired the entire warehouse staff who had been complicit in the bullying. I hired a new team. I told them on day 1, I don't care if you're loud. I don't care if you're quiet. But if you steal, I will find you. Because I see everything. My leg healed, though it aches when it rains. I still eat lunch alone sometimes. I still prefer silence. But the office is different now. When I walk down the hall, people don't look past me. They nod. They say hello. They show respect. They know that the quiet ones are the ones watching. Last week, I received a letter from prison. It was from Trent. Arthur. I hope you're happy. You ruined my life. All for what? A few pallets of electronics? You're a sad, lonely little man. I didn't finish reading it. I ran it through the shredder. Then, I opened a new spreadsheet. I had noticed some irregularities in the San Diego branch shipping logs. Small discrepancies. Barely noticeable. Unless you know where to look. I cracked my knuckles. Time to go to work. Author's note, I learned a valuable lesson through all of this. In a world of noise, silence is not a weakness. It is camouflage. And while the loud ones are busy shouting about how important they are, the quiet ones are the ones writing the history books. Or, in my case, the indictments. Edit, update, the trial verdict. I didn't think I would be updating this, but since so many of you asked for the final outcome of the trial, here it is. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Trent, guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The judge was particularly harsh because of the breach of trust and the scale of the theft. Brenda, guilty. 12 years. She screamed when the verdict was read. She actually turned to the jury and yelled, "Do you know who I am?" It didn't help her case. Rick, as I mentioned, he took the plea. He got 5 years, eligible for parole in 3. He testified against the other 2 with a level of detail that was actually impressive. Turns out, he kept his own insurance file, a notebook where he wrote down every illegal order Trent ever gave him. He handed it over to the DA. I was there for the sentencing. I sat in the back row. When the bailiffs were leading Trent away, he stopped. He scanned the courtroom until he locked eyes with me. He didn't scream. He didn't curse. He just looked deflated. He looked like a man who finally realized that he wasn't the main character of the universe. I gave him a small nod. Just a tiny dip of the chin. He looked away and walked through the door to his cell. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. I put on my headphones. I played my favorite song. And I walked back to my car, quiet as a ghost. The technical details, for those asking. A lot of you in the comments are asking how exactly they bypassed the SAP system for so long. I want to explain it because it shows just how arrogant they were. The flaw wasn't in the software, it was in the human workflow. When a shipment is received, it enters a status called GR hold, goods receipt hold, while it is being inspected. Usually, this lasts 2 to 4 hours. Trent used his override authorization to extend the GR hold indefinitely for specific SKUs. This effectively made the inventory invisible to the main sales ledger, because the system thought it was still sitting on the receiving dock waiting to be counted. Rick would then physically move the stock out the back door. Once it was gone, Brenda would go into the system and change the status from GR hold to vendor return sent. She would generate a fake return merchandise authorization, RMA number. To the system, it looked like, we received the goods. We inspected them. We rejected them and sent them back to the vendor. The money trail was covered because Trent would issue a credit memo against the vendor's account in our internal finance system, which masked the missing capital. It was a loop. A perfect circle of fraud. The only reason I caught it was the weight logs. They could fake the digital status, but they couldn't fake the truck scales. When they returned the goods digitally, there was no corresponding outbound truck weight event in the logs because the goods had actually left in a smuggler's van days earlier, which didn't cross the commercial scales. They were smart. But they forgot that I audited the scale calibration every Thursday. A final thought on bullying. I read through the comments, and I see a lot of people sharing similar stories. People being ignored, mocked, or undervalued. My advice is this: document everything. If they make a joke about you, write down the date and time. If they exclude you from a meeting, save the email chain. If they make you do their work, keep the original files with the metadata showing you as the author. You never know when you will need ammunition. I didn't start collecting data to catch thieves. I started collecting data to protect myself in case they tried to fire me for poor performance. The theft was just a bonus. Stay quiet. Stay observant. And never, ever let them see you bleed. That's all for now. I have a San Diego audit to finish. 1 year later, an unexpected twist. I thought the story was over. I really did. But life has a way of being stranger than fiction. 3 days ago, I got a call from the FBI. Mr. Penhaligon? Speaking. This is Agent Miller. We worked on the Viridian case. I remember. Is everything okay? Well, yes and no. We did a forensic audit of Trent's seized laptop. The one we pulled from his home safe. Okay. We found some encrypted files. We finally broke the key yesterday. It seems Trent wasn't just stealing from Viridian. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Trent was recording his meetings with the CEO. The CEO, Mr. Sterling. The guy who was in the Maldives. I know who he is. Apparently, Mr. Sterling knew about the theft. He was taking a 10% cut of Trent's profits to look the other way. He was using the losses to write off taxes for the parent company. I stood up. My chair fell over. Are you serious? Dead serious. We are moving to arrest Sterling tomorrow. We need you to come in and walk us through the GR Hold exploit again. We think Sterling was using it across all 5 regional branches. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. It was a hysterical, dry laugh. Mr. Penhaligon? I'm here, I said. I'm just surprised. We're going to need you to testify again, Arthur. I looked at my reflection in the office window. The director of loss prevention. I'll be there, I said. So, it turns out the rabbit hole goes deeper. I wasn't just fighting a trio of bullies. I was fighting a systemic rot that went to the very top. And the best part? Sterling was the one who signed my promotion paperwork. He thought buying my silence with a title would work. He thought making me one of them would keep me quiet. He forgot the first lesson. I don't care about the title. I don't care about the money. I care that the numbers balance. And Mr. Sterling? Your numbers are way off. See you in court. The end.